Hi, folks. It's Tuesday, November 11th, 2025. As always, it's me, Theo Todorvodov, and I'm back with the 64th episode of Keeping It Realistic, a show that, as you well know, is done in collaboration with Chaos and very much dedicated to all of you, the wonderful Chaos Campus community. Welcome to everyone watching this episode, no matter if live with us here today or watching the recording later. We appreciate you in both ways. However, let's still give a special shout out to those of you who actually showed up and make these shows feel so special, so lively and unique. Thanks for being here, guys. It's always a pleasure. I see Mario here. I see Derika here saying hello. Hi, beautiful people. Hi, back to you. It's awesome to have you here for a very, very interesting show today, because today we're going to have a very special guest, one of the co-founders of the Chaos Campus and an actual educator who teaches visualization. Some of you may have learned from his tutorials on YouTube, on his Chaos Theory channel in the past. Some of you may have even participated in some of his render challenges in the past. And in case you're into heavy music, you may have unknowingly watched a music or metal video that was directed and filmed by him. And I think it's really time to invite him over. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome with me straight from Denmark, Niklas Byriel Kure. There he is. Hi, my friend.
Theo. Thank you.
Hi. How was this introduction?
It was great. It was awesome. You nailed the name and everything.
I always want to pronounce the name in a different way. I gotta say it. I want to say Cure or something different, French, you know. But you said Cure, so this is what I do.
That is.
So welcome, my friends. How are you feeling?
I'm good. I'm good. It's I'm excited to be on Chaos Campus yet again. It's been a while. It's actually been a long time since the last time I was here. I was trying to look back, but I couldn't actually pinpoint when the last time was. I think we had a panel at some point, maybe. I can't even remember, but it's definitely been a year or two since the last time I was here. So it's definitely it's great being back, and yeah, I'm excited to tell a little bit about my story and what I've been doing in the meantime, and maybe even before that as well.
Yeah, this would be awesome, because it was a huge pleasure to meet you in person in Sofia. You were one of those people that I met for the first time after knowing for years online, and it just felt so natural. Like, oh yeah, there's Niklas. There he is, my old friend Niklas. It was just so cool. Of course, we hung out. We had a beer or more. We talked about everything, and I know a lot about you. But as you said, people here maybe do not know that much. So please tell us about your creative journey, about yourself, how you ended up where you are currently now, and where are you currently, and all of that. We'll be very happy to hear. Amit says there is an echo from
I did hear it before as well. It might have been from me. I'm trying to dial it in here a little bit. So sorry if there is a bit of an echo, but please do let me know if it continues, and I'll try and correct it as well.
I don't hear it anymore, but yeah, please tell us about yourself.
All good. I do actually hear an echo. I can hear it through your feed, though.
You can.
That might be where it comes from.
We both have echo cancellation turned on.
Yeah.
This is interesting. But Amit says it's okay now. By the way, Danushka, Amit, Bjorn is here. So yeah, we have a lovely audience and people who really want to hear from you. And
all right, so
your story.
Where does my journey start? It goes way back. I opened up, just to go way back. I opened up 3ds Max for the very first time in 1993 or 94, around that time. Keep in mind, 3D Studio is from 1992, so it's almost at the very beginning of it. I was quite young back then, but I was lucky enough. I had an older brother who's 7 years older than me, so he had a little bit of a an advantage in terms of technology back then. But he was a part of what was called the scene back then. So back then, people would meet up at LAN parties and they would contest or compete in graphics and in music and stuff like that as well on Amigas, C64s, and stuff like that as well.
Was it a Danish, typical Danish thing, like the scene?
No, I think it's something that you would see from everywhere. Essentially, it occurred all around the world, but you kind of had to be in the know, if that makes sense. The specific party I went to was called The Party here in Denmark, and was actually the biggest of Northern Europe. So that was 4,500 people meeting up every year, usually between, I think it was between Christmas and New Year's as well. There is a little bit of an echo, and I can hear myself through, I think, your speakers, or maybe it's on my end. It's just kind of weird.
The echo is back. Let's check out what we can do about it.
Yeah, we might as well try and see if we can fix it.
Yeah, we should. Okay. On my side, you say I don't have headphones. Do you have headphones with you?
Volume, but I think, is this better if I do this? I can hear a slight echo, but it's very weak now, at least. But am I still loud enough for everyone else? Or am I too quiet?
I hear you. But,
sure, but do the stream...
How about the audience? Let's see. Let's figure this out. Mario says it seems to be on your side.
I mean, I can hear it in my speakers. I'm using speakers that I always do, which is usually fine. So that's why I'm wondering why I can hear it on my end.
Okay. Let me see if I can eventually get some headphones on, if it's supposed to be on my side. Let me see if I can get some.
Worst case, I have headphones somewhere as well.
Yeah, I have some pretty close. Let's see if that works. We gotta figure this out. People should be able to enjoy this.
We'll take a moment to... we actually tested it before, but for whatever reason... see if Theo comes back.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's just your feed that's out, obviously. It's fine.
Yeah, but now I have an echo.
Oh, you have an echo.
Yeah. I hear you perfectly, but I hear myself too. And my cam is turned off for whatever reason. This is
great.
The live show. Yeah, okay. Let's figure it out for a second. So yeah, the moment I plugged in my headphones, my camera was like, nope, either me or the headphones. Okay, let's see what it is. And you guys should know that we actually met before that, so that we can figure out all the technical stuff, and it worked flawlessly.
As if it changed a little bit when we went into our when we started recording, actually, which is kind of weird in itself.
Yeah, let me see if I can change, because my camera just said nope, and decided it won't participate if it doesn't like the headphones for whatever reason. Okay. You can turn off the camera while recording, but you cannot switch cameras. I don't want to. I just want my camera to be on. What happened? Okay.
Did you, by accident, pull out the cord for it?
No. Everything is good. It's just that I'm not visible anymore. The question is, what happens if I cannot? Now something changed. It says just no camera, and that was it. I'm sorry, guys. Give us a second for us to, figure out what's going on here. It seems like my camera is on, but it doesn't want to turn on. Okay.
Worst case, we'll just have Theo come back in again.
I hope. Oh yeah, here I am.
There you are.
Yeah, but the echo is back. Probably because I don't have my headphones anymore.
We'll see
This
how
is
it goes. It usually I can start hearing it when I am just talking. I end up hearing it through my speakers as well. Right now, though, it seems to be okay. So just confirming with chat currently if there's anything.
yeah. They will let us know, please, if everything works. I'm visually back. It wouldn't have been the biggest issue if you don't see me, but you gotta properly hear us. So please let us know. Do you hear us? We obviously have this 15-second delay. This is, you cannot. Oh, seems fine, says Mario. Okay. It seems like you can continue sharing your story. And if it's needed, I'll just, plug in my headphones once again.
Yeah, it's all right.
Disappear and reappear, and then it's going to be okay.
All good. All right. So
Thank you, guys.
as I mentioned, started with the scene where people would compete in graphics, essentially. So people doing 3D graphics and other things at the same time, like music and so on what was at the time high-end computers, and later like it started with like Amigas and C64s and then went into actual like PCs and stuff like that. So I very much grew up in seeing people compete in that. I never was old enough to understand the programs enough to actually be able to compete myself, but it very much inspired me to get started with that whole thing. So that's when I the very first time started playing around with 3D Studio, as it was called back then. It wasn't called Max in any way or form. That came later. So that essentially introduced me into the world of how that worked, and was lucky enough to try out 3D Studio. I think it was version R2.5 or something like that. So very much early days. Later on in life, I played games a lot. Always been using a computer, grew up with computers around me. And that eventually got me to playing a lot of Blizzard games back then. So I very much got inspired by the cinematics from Warcraft 3, all of the cinematics from like StarCraft, and later on StarCraft 2 as well, and Diablo and so on. Like I've always been very intrigued by that whole thing. So that was very much my inspiration going into wanting to do 3D later on in life. And I actually took an education and learned 3D. We had the fortunate. I was very fortunate that there was a few schools that offered different educations within 3D. So it kind of gave me a leg up in the competition and going somewhere with that. So when I was 17, I think I started on that. And that gave me an apprenticeship later on, actually, in game development. And I went from that as an apprenticeship into more of a generalist approach, where I ended up doing visualization for like a company that did expos and stuff like that. Like they built the temporary buildings inside of expos for other companies, essentially. So we visualized those to help them sell it and all of those things. They later on then built LED screens, which we made graphics for. So motion design stuff that needed to be done for concerts or for digital signage solutions that you might know today. But this is, 25 or so years ago now. So it's been a while since back then.
You started 30 years ago, you've been a while in this field. That's awesome. And because you've seen it develop and grow with you in it.
For sure. Yeah. I started like with for example, with V-Ray. So V-Ray wasn't as much a thing when I started with 3D, obviously. But when eventually I started playing around with it more and more, and time passed, I think I started with Brazil render, which then later on I went into V-Ray, I think at around 1.5 or something like that, around that time of V-Ray, and then been stuck with V-Ray ever since. We talked a little bit about this at Chaos Connect days a couple of weeks ago when we met as well, when we did the introductions there. So yeah, it's a little bit of a different way into it, but that also gave me very much I realized personally that I wasn't as interested in becoming like a VFX artist or a game developer or anything like that. I wanted way more to play around with a little bit of everything. So I love the idea of the generalist approach, because one day I want to pick up a camera and do photography. The next day I want to do motion design. The next day I want to model something in 3D or light it or texture it or render it. Like there's so many different things that you can do. And the idea of being a specialist in something very niche have never really been my forte. So I really enjoy being able to do a little bit
all the doors open for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
It kind of fits the ADHD kind of mindset of everything and wanting to do everything at once. But it also does also mean for me that since I'm not specialized, you can always find someone who's better at something specific than I am, right? But I have a lot of experience with a lot of different things, which gives me a leg up in the competition if you have a customer who comes with a request that nobody's really done before. So I get a better idea of, oh, we can combine this, and this, and that without having to hire new people all the time. You can do a lot of the heavy lifting yourself, which is, one of the things I like doing as well, exploration with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't limit yourself. Like if you say, oh, I specialize in interiors, you become a master eventually. But then, you have this rather small bubble and there is so much going on out there, which you probably won't take part in unless it's a hobby or something like this anymore. So yeah, you keep your doors open, you keep your horizons open, and you can always add stuff. So it's about, in your case, it's about a broader knowledge of things rather than one specific things that you've mastered up to insanity.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is also legit. Let's be real about it. It's legit. It's just a different choice.
Yeah, there's something for everyone out there, and it kind of just depends on what what is it that you want to do. So later on, a little bit later on from there, I ended up quitting my job to go solo and started my own studio. That's where I founded Negative Black, which my studio is called. And from there, I was kind of by accident, I ended up in the education system and was asked if I wanted to help teach some kids at a school not too far from where I live. And I was like, that seemed like a good, decent money coming in at a decent rate, rather than have to go out and find, new clients every day and try and make a living off of that as well. So I very much ended up doing that and actually ended up working with that school for 12 years. And in the meantime of that, actually took up a bachelor's. It's called a professional bachelor here, but is essentially a bachelor in didactics and pedagogy for adult learners as well. So I picked that up to kind of try and get a little bit better in terms of how to teach specifically, and with an interest in archviz, because archviz is the one of all of the trades that gets the closest to becoming like very much a generalist approach. So ironically, I teach archviz, and I've done that for now 15 years, but I've never like specialized in being an archviz artist necessarily myself.
Well, you specialize in everything.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And you specialize in being a teacher.
Yeah.
I think we'll talk about it later. I have a question in this regard in the Q&A section, which is going to be in the end of the show. Mm-hmm. And I'll ask you about this. So yeah, please continue.
Cool. So yeah, essentially going down that road and having had a lot of students through my old job, which was 3D College Denmark. Eventually, we were awarded the world's best visualization school 3 years in a row, I think it was, by the rookies, which did really well. Later on, I was contacted by a small company called CGspectrum. And they asked if I wanted to do a department specifically for visualization, because they wanted to get into that. And that's now 3 years ago. So that's what I've been doing for the past 3 years. Is I've made my my way of trying to start this whole department and getting students for CGspectrum in visualization, not just archviz, but also product visualization, automotive rendering, all of those. Everything that you can kind of cram into what you might think of when you think visualization. And even you was hijacked at least into the idea of CGspectrum because that was the very first thing I actually did when I started that department, was that I need a network of people who's ready to help out and who I can kind of throw ideas at and see what they think sticks and what might not stick and so on. And I've been using you for a long time for that alone.
You hear it. I've been used. No, but yeah, obviously it looks great in the CV though. I've been a mentor for 3 years without really doing much. But
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
really hoping for the future, because yeah, teaching is especially I think in our field I cannot imagine teaching, let's say 15, 16-year-old pupils at school. I think it would be hard to do, but like in our field, people actually know to appreciate this type of knowledge and actively search for it.
Mhm.
So teaching is very rewarding and very, very something actually very pleasant. I don't teach the same way you do, like professionally, but I do my mentorship here. But getting people who just write, wow, this is like a mentorship, I learned so much, it's just so rewarding, it's just so cool.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's you mentioned it as in you don't necessarily teach in the same way that a professional teacher might do. And I think that's a good thing, actually, because I consider myself in the same way that you do as well. So as in, I know the rules or the book in terms of how you should be doing and what all of the clever people say that you should do in terms of teaching. But I kind of like breaking the rules. I kind of like going off the books in terms of how you would do things, and being maybe a little bit more untraditional, because a lot of those old people who have taught how to teach, essentially, they feel so detached from the real world in terms of how to engage with young people, or even just not necessarily that young people, but just engaging with people, especially in a more modern age now with Zoomers going around and everything. Like, people have their attention span and how everything works has just changed so much over the time as well. So you kind of need to do something to make things a little bit more memorable, to make it easier to consume in terms of contents as well. And that's very much one of my focus areas in terms of how do I get the point out, which might sometimes be a really boring point when you look at it. How do you make it not boring? How do you make it memorable? How do you make someone remember something? I usually I make the comparison that a lot of people usually don't like math. Like, a lot of people, they grow up not really liking math. And I think the main reason for that is that their math teacher didn't do a good enough job on telling them the context of how they could use it. So without understanding the context of why should you find X? How do you solve Y? How do you whatever, right? It doesn't necessarily make sense for people as to where that's useful, right?
It's useless theory. Like, this has been an issue since first grade for me in Bulgaria at school. It was like, learn. Why? Because you have to. And, then you lose interest. But with my girls, I try to always, when they learn like math, I'm like, you know what? Imagine you want to paint a wall in your room in a certain color, and you need to find out the surface. This is why you need it. Like, practical usage.
So you need context for it. And much in the same way that a lot of you people might know that if you had to remember a password, a long password, what people sometimes do to learn those passwords is that they make up a story, and maybe it's the first letter of each word in that story that actually makes out your password. That's easier to remember than the random sequence of numbers or letters, right? Much in the same way, when I cheat something, especially if it's quite boring, I try and make it more interesting, or at the very least, I connect a story to it, something from my own personal experience, or something like way out of like something that's kind of weird, but that makes it memorable. So by swearing sometimes, by using whatever I can with my vocabulary, that kind of just helps remembering it. And they're kind of like, oh, that's right. When he went off of a tangent and talked about this random thing, that's where we learned about unwrapping, or something that people don't usually like that much, or whatever it might be, right? So that kind of helps remembering things a little bit easier, rather than remembering the hotkey for something in 3ds Max, which, a lot of people struggle with.
Teaching has a lot to do with the personality of the teacher as well. I think all the teachings that I remember, all the school classes that I remember, have to do with some teachers that I liked that were cool for some reason. So, and this is where you develop the interest for whatever. Sometimes you even don't like the subject itself, but the teachers are so cool that you get into it because of them. Better than the other way around, where you have an interesting topic, but you have some sleepy teacher who just wants to, make their hours and go home.
So you can definitely feel it when it's someone who's just there just because it's a job, right?
Yeah.
Well, where when it's someone who's there who's passionate about what it is that they're talking about, and the further they get into it, the more they get passionate about it because it's really exciting for them. It doesn't actually matter if you care about it anymore. You start caring about it because you get kind of pulled into it, and it gets more and more interesting in that regards. So that's very much what I try and do. It obviously does mean that it takes a lot of energy when you teach. A lot of our classes are, well, all of our classes are live, meaning that we have pre-recorded contents, obviously, that we try and make as entertaining as possible while giving you all of the information that it needs. But we have live sessions connected to all the lessons at the same time as well, which is one of the things that really meant that I wanted to go with CGspectrum when I started that, because I didn't want it to just be a glorified YouTube, essentially, where you're just paying for videos that you could have found yourself, right? I wanted to be a live experience. I wanted to be the direct feedback that you get from being with someone. That is very much what I wanted to go for.
And I think the passion is also something which if you pre-record a video, it's mostly informational. It focuses on a topic or something. But I think that through a live session, you can share this passion that you have. This is something very visible with Nicklas, for example, where he starts being loud and then saying how this is amazing and this and that. And it kind of becomes contagious to the viewers.
Yeah.
And I can very much imagine it with you, because you're also the type of person who has this passion, and this is great for the students. I met one of the CGspectrum, visualization course students in Berlin.
Oh yeah, you met Gisem?
Yeah, she was there, and she was very happy, and I can absolutely understand why. So I mean, Amit has questions. I mean, if your questions are related very much to what we talk about right now, shoot them now. Other than that, in the end of the show, we have a Q&A official session where you can ask Nicklas whatever you want. By the way, in the meantime, Nigel, hello, mate.
Hi, Nigel.
Also join us Isaac, Tihan, and Sheriff, whose work we're going to be talking about in just a few minutes. The first work we will be reviewing. So great to have you here, dear Sheriff. And Danushka, I saw your comment about you and your small bubble. Doing interiors mainly isn't a small bubble, obviously, and but you are actually capable of a lot more. I've seen exteriors of yours, I've seen project images of yours, so I wouldn't say that you should be limiting yourself to interiors. This may be your main emphasis and something that you're, let's say, the best in at the moment, but you're still a great artist overall, and you can do way more than interiors. But there is also, once again, nothing wrong in just doing or specializing in a certain area. It's as Nicklas said, it's just to each their own. He prefers to be a generalist. You can prefer to be an interior artist and a master of that skill, and that's absolutely fine. So
even being an interior artist ends up being a little bit of a generalist in itself, because you cannot. Usually, when we talk about specialists, it's about, oh, I'm a modeler, so I model, or a creature artist, or texture artist, or whatever, right? But in Viz, you kind of end up doing a little bit of modeling, not that much anymore. I feel like a lot of people now end up utilizing asset libraries more so than anything, which is completely fair. But you still do need to model out the space that you're at. But other than that, you would usually you would have to. There's a lot of things you still need to do and need to know how to do that are considered specializations on their own if you went into VFX or if you went into game development in some cases as well, which I think gives everyone a leg up in the competition here as a Viz artist, because it makes it easier to go out as a Viz artist and then become a VFX artist later on in life if you choose to go in a different direction. Let's say the the everything changes and the AC isn't going too well, and you want to go over to media and entertainment instead because that's maybe where everything's booming. That's not the case right now. It's probably more opposite, if anything. But it's, you know, it's just nice to know that we have good options out there, especially if you come from biz in one way or another. In fact, I think you have the most options.
Absolutely. Also, I think that even as a generalist, you probably also have things that you are better at than other things that you do in 3D. Like, let's say you're better at stills than motion graphics, or the other way around, or visual effects, or all of that. So yeah, everybody has strong points. That's normal. Okay, here's the question by Amit. He wanted to ask now. You've probably read it by now, but it says, you being an established artist over the years, what gave you a spark to the thought of creating this community,
That's a good question.
Amit, obviously.
I've always been a huge advocate of giving back wherever you can. I was a big advocate for companies, and I shouted at a lot of companies for taking in paid internships as part of their like normal routine in terms of how they hire people. In fact, I had a whole talk in Las Vegas in front of, I don't even know how many thousand people were there. Quite a few actually for my talk alone. And I was almost yelling at them, telling them that they should implement paid internships, especially in the US, because they're kind of known for not doing that as much. Because giving, like, even if you don't end up with that intern as your full-time employee later down the road, you're still helping the industry itself grow. You're still helping the next generation of viz artists to get out there and be a part of all of it. The fact that you have competition out there, if you're a business owner and do visualization, for example, the idea that there's another company doing the same thing and competing is not as much competition. If anything, there's more than enough room for all of us as it is right now. So it's just helping everyone realizing what you can use viz artists for. So it's actually benefiting your business that a different company is out there and selling a lot of things. It's not taking away jobs from you. It's probably, at least in my mind, it's spawning more jobs by letting their competitors or others to see that, oh, we should hire someone like that. Yeah. And then they go out and maybe hire you instead of your competition or whatever, right? So it actually creates more jobs to have that competition as it is right now. And that means we need to take care of our future generations. And when you end up needing more employees, you have now helped that get along with the availability of more artists being out there. So giving back to the community is basically my way of trying to, you know, start communities all the way around. I think I cannot remember exactly how it all went, but we talked a little bit about this before starting this session, right? We talked about how I was definitely there at the beginning of Chaos Campus. I cannot remember exactly how it actually started. I know it was Emma, and Niklas was a big part of it as well. I kind of remember it as we were in a meeting and we were talking about how can we create a community for Viz specifically. And Chaos had some ideas. That was then through Emma back then as well. And then you came in quite early on as well. And it kind of just all came into fruition in itself, right? Much in the same way, I went with Niklas and we created student rendering challenges, both through Chaos. We've done that a couple of times, but we also made a few competitions specifically for students at the Rookies. So we made rendering challenges there to kind of help give students an excuse to make more art, to make more on your portfolio and to learn a little bit at the same time, because we had some pretty we had some ideas in terms of what we felt like needed in those typical competitions that you saw with rendering and so on as well. We didn't want it to just be here, end up with an image that looks good, right? We wanted people to work a little bit more on their pre-production. We wanted to see people actually thinking about making a mood board before they end up with their final product, because you can see it in the final product when someone spent time thinking about color themes, mood boards, compositions, lighting, all of those things. If they've thought about it, And you can also see it when they haven't thought about it. And it's kind of more of a, by accident, we ended up here. And it might look okay and you might get away with it a few times, but we want people to be a bit more, to learn how to be more consistent with their results, right? So
it's not a sustainable strategy to rely on luck.
Yeah, so more focus on the soft skills rather than the hard skills. The hard skills are easy to learn, essentially. Just go on YouTube, Google how to something in V-Ray or Corona Render or whatever. It doesn't actually matter. There's bound to be a billion videos showing you how to do something very specific. But how to achieve a good composition in the type of living room that you're doing right now, or with that building that you're currently working on, that's a lot harder to realize. And you need to know a little bit more about composition rules and golden rule of thirds, golden triangles, or whatever kind it is that you're using. It doesn't actually matter, but the fact that you are aware of how all of this works and goes in together, that makes it a lot more interesting.
Totally agree. And I think we maybe a follow-up question. Amit actually had a follow-up question, but you more or less answered it already. Like, what were your initial thoughts when creating the community? And what do you think when you see it now with almost 10,000 members? We're at 9.5K and we have 1.5 months to make the 10K until the end of the year. Not that it matters.
It matters. I think it's worth hunting. I think we should. Yeah. I would love to see the community grow to 10,000 people in that short amount of time. I feel like that's amazing, considering like visualization is still kind of niche in some ways, right? So the fact that we can collect 10,000 people for something like that, I think that's amazing in a closed group. Like, don't forget, it's not an open group. You actually have to apply for it and be a part of it, essentially. So I love it. I mean, I think it's the most important thing that we can do, because we've seen, and even you and I now experienced it again at Connect Days, where how important networking is and getting to meet people, even if it's just online, because we've been working together through the internet for, I don't even know how long now, but for quite basically since Chaos Campus started. That's around probably the timing for that. And for me, working with someone like Niklas, it was also the very first time I met Niklas at Connect Days a couple of weeks ago. Even though I've done rendering challenges with him as judges and stuff like that. Even Nigel, who's in the chat somewhere, I met him. I think it was the first time I met Nigel was at 3D Meetup London last year, maybe. I think I can't actually remember.
It was the first time now.
Yeah, because I've been at a bunch of events all the way back to like Total Chaos back in 2018 and 2019, and I met a lot of people there as well. But I'm pretty sure the first time I met Nigel was at 3D Meetup London last year, and I've known Nigel for God knows how many years as well. So it's just, and it just felt natural, right? The first thing we two did when we met each other was that we gave each other a big hug. There was no questions. It wasn't even awkward. I mean, it was a little awkward, but it wasn't that awkward, right? It was fine. Not awkward at all. So that's what online communities can even do. It's not a replacement. It won't replace the magic of actually meeting someone in person. Yeah, Nigel, exactly. So in person, so we'd worked together through 24 Hours of Chaos and the Rookies and stuff. We've known each other for a long time, but actually meeting face to face was last year. But even so, we've known each other for I don't know how many years, especially through the Rookies, because I was affiliated with that through the other school that I worked for as well. And Nigel is like the main judge responsible for visualization or archviz at the Rookies as well. So again, it's just amazing to then meet people in real life. It just makes it that more natural, but it also spawns more opportunities. Like Nigel, I remember it as Nigel reaching out to me for 24 Hours of Chaos originally, because we already knew each other. He kind of knew what I was doing and stuff like that as well. I imagine that's how it was. Either that or it was a roll of the dice and he just, let's just go with this guy. I don't know.
He's here to tell us.
So yeah.
Yeah, but by the way, if you want to see Nigel live, here on Keeping It Realistic. This will happen in 2 weeks from now, where we will have our 65th episode. It's going to be a business special together with Nigel, with Mengi, with Ludo, Hannes, and Petter. So it's going to be a really, really strong team with
that's
me
a
here.
3D meetup themed, I feel like, yeah?
Exactly. And it's going to be wonderful.
That's awesome.
And we have people with so much knowledge about business here to answer your questions. So make sure to please give me your questions. There is a post about it. Post everything you want to know, you want me to ask those people. Of course, you have the chance during the live session because we won't be talking about anything else rather than business and answering your questions. But still, and once again, the connection here, you see, this is what I also use the Chaos Connect days for, to gather this team of people. Some of them you saw last week where we talked about the event itself. Now we have Nicklas here, and then on the next show we'll have 5 other people that I met there that I gathered for a business special. So connection is extremely important. Networking, putting yourself out there, talking to people. Absolutely. And this is what we have this group for. Of course, here this is an educational community as well. So you get a lot of mentorship through the constructive feedback that is provided. And let this be a very nice transition to us starting to review some works, because I think we can be here for 10 hours or something, just talking. Sure. Well, but yeah, we want to limit the show to 2.5 hours. So let's jump in and do some reviewing. As I already stated, we will be starting with work by Sheriff first. So let me share my screen for a second, and then we'll start talking about it. Now it's a Chrome tab or it's a window. It's every time I get these things wrong. I think this is the right thing that you'll be seeing, correct?
Yep. Looks fine.
Nice. Okay, let me just. Oh, I hear myself.
That's my bad.
Oh, okay. That's if it's your bad, then it's okay. Okay, let me see what we have here in the comments just for a second. Amit saying that's the unity in diversity. Nigel saying correct. I wanted to know what magic you're installing into your students. Okay, so it was a deliberate choice, dear Nicklas.
Yeah.
And Amit says Theo is like a tree and we're his fruits and flowers. Wow, we're getting deep into the metaphors here, but it's a lovely one, I gotta say. So, Sheriff's work. Sheriff writes, good evening, I'm pleased to share a small personal project featuring a bathroom which aims to achieve better artificial lighting and more inviting atmosphere. There is no access to natural light. So this is the main challenge here, a bath done only with artificial illumination. This is my 3rd post regarding this project, but it is actually my 17th trial. Nice. I changed the backlit onyx wall because I'll show you the previous version he shared. The backlit onyx wall, I doubt it will work well. I added a stone wall instead. The reflections on the mirror is faded due to the volume material used so that the reflected image is not clear. I added some water streaks to the mirror material as if the water is condensed on it. I tried to tweak the light and material as much as possible, paying attention to every detail and addressing all previous comments. I hope you like this version and I hope you're not disturbed by my posts on the same project, but I want it to be perfect. Kindly find the modified version, the 3rd image. Thanks a lot. So before we get into the review, let me just say, usually when I have a co-reviewer with me, I try to pick projects that have some topic that kind of combines them together. Today, with having an actual visualization teacher here, the common denominator are actually projects by artists who have put a ton of effort, like Sheriff here, but where the work is not quite there where it deserves to be. And here, because Sheriff is saying, I hope you're not disturbed by my post at the same project, we absolutely are not, because this is what this community is for. You're striving to become a better artist. You're doing your best. You're putting in the effort, and we will absolutely support you in this. So before Nicklas shares his opinion on your work, and I enlarge the images, let me just show you the previous versions. This was the very first version of this bathroom. This is how it started. with his guy who's still pretty asleep, looking at it. And then after getting some feedback, things went in this direction, which was a bit over the top. So we had to, go back a bit. The concept needed to be cleared out. And this is now the current version that Sheriff has shared with us. This is the other side, the vanity unit side with volumetrics. This is it without volumetrics. And this is the bathroom shot. And Nicklas, the stage is yours. I really want to hear what you have to say about this.
Sure.
Please.
So, first of all, this is a great project. I like it. It's fun and it's different, and it presents itself with some common challenges when it comes to not having natural light available all of a sudden. It's actually, I personally feel like it's one of the harder things to do, is get something to work really well when you have no natural light to use. If you have big open windows that where you can use to just flood in soft lighting from an overcast sky and just really boost that makes it a lot easier, right? So the challenge here is to get it to feel moody. I feel like it's the mood that we need to focus on, especially because you have a lot of indirect lights. So your LED strips all the way at the top and in the at the bottom as well, and on the shelves when I look at the bathroom picture. But both of them essentially, like the one with the tub, but also this one with the sink, you can see a lot of those indirect things, and they're giving away a lot of texture, and they're doing what they're kind of supposed to at the very least. And you have the spotlights in the very top of the image as well, which is great. You can even see a little bit of your atmospherics there because there are a little bit of volumetrics to them without it being too much. So that's really good. Those are some of like the really big highlights that I want to emphasize, that this is great. This is stuff that you need to keep, right? Some of the things that are grabbing my attention, if we focus on this image as the first one, the one with the tub, just to take one at a time. It's a little bit flat to my taste. You can kind of see that when you look at the plants in the middle, for example, that they go into like gray more so than anything. So the shadows don't really become shadows. It just kind of tones out into gray. This is most probably due to your atmospherics at the same time, because you kind of have to fill the room with fog in order to get your volumetrics on your lighting. But if you're having trouble controlling those two things, render it out in passes. So you have your atmospherics in one pass for itself, and it doesn't commit to the full beauty pass. Or cheat your atmospherics and do it in post afterwards on the lighting. Because it's the only reason you have it is because you want that little bit on the very top of the spots. The little bit of volumetrics you have up there, that's the whole reason you've done it. But it makes the whole image a little bit flat. That's the first thing. At the same time, the bathtub is not as flat, and that's it's allowed to go black into like the deepest blacks you can, but it's almost the only place where that happens. So the shadows and the contrast of the bathtub doesn't match the contrast of the plants and the wall on the background, for example. So it's kind of jarring a little bit in your eyes in terms of figuring out what's going on here. And I think it's because of those atmospherics. So I would try and balance out those two things. Effectively, I would want a little bit more contrast on the background part, as in the whole image except the tub, but I would want less contrast on the tub itself. So I would want those two to meet in the middle. Does that make sense?
Absolutely does. I think the volumetrics one can create just a volumetrics volumetric container up here, which is only limited to the ceiling, something like a sphere or something, so that you have a bit of this effect, but it doesn't affect the colors down here and wash them out. But oh yeah, let me say, this is so awesome to have Nicklas here do the reviewing. I can just shut up and listen. Let's go. I enjoy that.
The other part that I noticed quite a lot is that these plants. Did you use? Is he here, by the way?
He was here.
Oh, yeah. He is here. Good, great. Sheriff, did you use Corona or did you use V-Ray? I didn't catch that part. I don't know if it was mentioned. It doesn't actually matter that much at the end of the day.
Not really. It doesn't state here. This is why it's important to do that, guys, because with V-Ray and Corona, there are some differences. It's not the same engine, so we could be more specific to give you a specific tip on one of those.
Areas. I'm assuming that the plants in the background, regardless if it's, I'm assuming it's Chaos Cosmos assets. One of the things with those plants is that they sometimes don't really look the best that they could.
Corona, it is. Sorry for interrupting. He answered Corona.
All right, cool. So what I would do is that I would change the materials of the plants to start with, make them more play around with the translucency of those plants. If it's Corona, I can't remember what the options are because Theo is a lot more Corona minded than I am. I'm a little bit more into V-Ray. But essentially making them more translucent in terms of material, so they look a little bit more lively, so they glow up a little bit, essentially, because that's usually what your subsurface scattering, translucency, or two-sided materials, depending on what you use for it. They have a tendency of not having that as much. They might have the correct material, but it might not. It might need quite a bit of adjustment before it actually looks like something that's alive. Because right now they kind of look plasticky and dead. So they need to have their materials changed a little bit to look a little bit more lively. Some of this can be due to the contrast that we talked about before as well. That will help. And making minor adjustments to the color or whatever, that can do a few things, but they do look kind of fake in a sense. So that can be changed through the material itself.
But he already started changing them in the beginning. They look like this. They're pitch black almost.
So this is miles apart. Like this is great. It's going in the right direction. I'm just adding to where can we do even more, right? So
exactly.
The other thing, this is one of my huge focus areas in general with my students, is that there are two things usually that most students are told that they need. The first thing is you need to remember to have gradients. You kind of have really good gradients in this image. So there's even though you have plain surfaces on the walls to the left and the ceiling and even the floor, we can kind of feel that there are gradients within them in terms of the light being reflected and the reflections in them and so on. But when you have gradients, that's the first step. The next step is then to break it so it's not linear gradients all the time to make them visually more interesting. And the way that you do that is that you add surface imperfections to them. And it needs to be subtle, like really subtle, because this is meant to be a polished archviz kind of thing, right? We're not supposed to make it dirty, but we want some variation in it, as if someone wiped it over with a wet cloth, but didn't go over the exact same amount of times everywhere, right? You want a little bit of, I want to say smudges, but hopefully you know what I mean when I say that it
like
shouldn't
the
look
fronts in a kitchen. This is exactly what we do there. There's some noise, it's not perfect reflection.
Exactly. I have a personal opinion in terms of where to find really good surface imperfection materials, actually, and I do want to share that, even though it is a little bit of a dig, because I do. It's a paid product, I will admit. But there is the website surfaceimperfections.com. It's pretty easy to remember.
Okay, let's check it out.
Surface imperfections it costs like $19 for the whole pack.
Is it one word?
Yeah, just in one word.
Okay.
So we'll give David a little bit of a free advertisement here, but I really enjoy his pack. So his Surface Imperfections Volume 1, that's the only one. He has multiple other packs that you can look into if you're interested, but his Surface Imperfections, there are 52 tile textures, and they're great. They're obviously shown as over the top in terms of all of the test renders and everything, which is fine. We're not supposed to use them as over the top, but they're highly scanned textures of real life imperfections like smudges, debris, hair, all of those things as well. So you really do get a lot for those $19. And it's in TIFF images, so they're high bit. It's a high bit depth. It's not just JPEGs that you get with them, and they're high resolution as well. And they're all tileable. And they're made tileable in real life, as in when they were scanned. So he hasn't actually used clone stamp or anything to tile them. It was made intricately on the surface that was scanned for the purpose of it, which is quite amazingly done as well. They look awesome. You even actually, for the same price, you actually get a 2-hour video on how to use it inside of 3ds Max with V-Ray that was recorded originally by Grant Warwick.
Nice.
One of the OGs when it comes to texturing in V-Ray especially. So you actually get that for free with it as well, so you can use and just to see how he implemented it and how he uses it in his setup. But use these as your glossy reflections or as your anisotropic reflections, especially, and to break your reflections a little bit. You can see the difference between why you would use anisotropy versus glossiness, for example. It really does a lot when you start moving things. It gives a lot more interesting thing when it comes to like grease, especially.
Yeah, and let's be honest, like $19 isn't like a high price for 52 tile textures.
There is a free sample there as well, if I remember correctly, so you can test it out if you want. I can't remember actually where it is. I feel like there is a free sample somewhere that you can get from it, but at least check it out if you want. As a small disclaimer to this, I am affiliated with David, but not the product itself. So me shouting it out doesn't affect me, doesn't give me anything. But David is actually technically one of my former students a long time ago. But he's now a personal friend of mine, and he's done a lot in terms of those texture works and so on as well. He's a VFX artist, so he's worked on Star Wars, The Mandalorian, he's worked on Star Trek and stuff like that for through the company called Ghost VFX.
Nice. So it's also nice of you to support him.
Oh yeah, I continuously. If it's a great product, I'm gonna shout it out everywhere, because everyone should at the very least be aware. But you can use that literally on any of your surfaces in this image, right? There's like the bathtub, especially the faucet where the water comes out of. Like that's very dull looking. It's kind of boring and it's kind of gray, if you will. And it's very much that plain. It doesn't have any depth. It doesn't have any, like, it just kind of looks a little bit off. It also looks like you modeled this yourself, because when I look at the model, the stick on the right side of it, which is, I guess, the handle part, it looks weird to me. It's fair if this is a model an asset that you've gotten somewhere, and it might be a correct faucet, but it looks as if the design is kind of awkward.
I think it's a shower head, what you see here to the right.
But in that case, it's way too thin, right?
Very thin, yeah.
So there's something off about it, and the material itself is a little bit too simple. So I would change some of those things to make it look a little bit better. And again, surface imperfections can do a lot of those things as well. Same with the top. It's a great, fun, translucent material that you're using for the tub. Although I'm a little bit unsure if you've done the water right, because I cannot figure out if refraction should bend all of those refraction, that the half see-through part of it, because everything lines up perfectly right now. But if you took a glass of water and you put in a straw into it, the straw would be bent because of the difference of light, speed of light going through it, right? And here you have a giant tub made out of whatever material this is, resin or something, right? And like, it's filled with water, so that shouldn't the lines be off because of the refractions, or is that not just me?
Or scaled up?
I'm a little unsure of if this is correct or not, so that's why I'm just pointing it out. It's worth noting, because we don't see translucent tubs that often. So there is that. Yeah. Other than that, I think it's pretty cool. I like it. Did I get kicked off? I might have.
Hello?
Hello. Oh, okay. Was it me or was it you?
It was me. I was just, my camera turned off and everything. I'm sorry.
That's completely fine. I was unsure of who of us got kicked off, actually.
Yeah, the first time it happens, it's a premiere. So let's continue sharing.
Yeah, all good. So anyway, I think that's that covers quite a lot that can be done with this image. There's always a billion things that we can look into, but I think this is, I think this is the main things that I would focus on to begin with on something like this.
Yeah, did you hear about the gravel? I was starting to talk about the gravel.
I did not. Go for it.
Oh yeah. I think the gravel is a bit too rough, honestly. Here, now what I enjoy very much is the contrast in the roughness, the surface roughness between the wall tiles and this natural part here, natural stone structure. It's very, very cool to have such contrasts. And you have the gravel down here, which is a bit too much because you already have this contrast here.
Yeah.
And usually for a bathroom, it's still a sanitary space. So usually this is why we have those white river stones that are, so sleek and smooth and so on, and not something like a high gravel on a construction site.
Yeah.
So try to go for something else. Maybe go with sand or go with smaller gravel or with grass even. Why not? It's like you're fantasizing here, right? So you can go wild on this one, I would say.
You could also go with bloodstones like black, like the
or something different.
lava stones or something like that as well.
Yeah. Something different, but not the same thing, which is more or less the same, but not quite the same, because this is annoying to the viewer's eye. And also the marble floor, this type of, just repetition, even though it's obviously mirrored, but still this is not very authentic, especially if it's gonna be like expensive marble, then it would have a different structure to it and not the same, just mirrored. And and maybe stuff on the shell. Now breaking the symmetry is something cool, but you already do it with the shelf, so maybe these things can be a bit desaturated, a bit less present, so that they're not distracting. You still have your main eye catcher being the bathtub, not the stuff on the side. It's just for the storytelling and for the lived-in feeling. But I think we should not.
It might be a little bit close to the back wall as well. In terms, it's a little bit hard to see from this perspective, but that opening the window essentially, like that looks like it only has a small sliver until it hits the back wall. So maybe, because imagine having to cut out that marble piece that goes on there as a tile. That would be almost impossible. So you would need a few more centimeters in terms of thickness to the back wall.
Yeah,
maybe.
Exactly.
That could be the perspective fooling us a little bit as well.
Dear Nicklas, people love you being here a reviewer and say you need to come for future shows, and I would love that. But I think we need to hurry up a bit, because if we talk about an image for around 10 minutes...
Oh, yeah. This can take forever. We'll make it a little bit more simple on the other things for this same project, because a lot of it is the same story in terms of the materials, in terms of trying to add some of those imperfections that I talked a little bit about before. The mirror here is gray and not a mirror, so it looks kind of weird. It gets the same issue with, I think, the atmospherics as before. I think that's why it gets grayed out.
It's the condensed water. He said that he added those water streaks, but the thing is, if you have condensed water, you have it on every sleek, smooth surface. So you have it on the tiles, you have it on the faucet, on the sink, you have it everywhere. So either do it everywhere, which you don't want. Also, you need it on the lamps as well, or just get rid of it, because you cannot only have condensation on the mirror only and everything else is like clean and dry. This doesn't work. So just get rid of it, the same you did on the second image, where it's not there and the mirror looks way more like a mirror.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. Faucet has the same issue as before, because it's probably the same material. It blends in too much with the background, as well as just being kind of dull in the terms of color, so it doesn't really look as believable, if you will. The contrasty version, so the color corrected version, or whatever we should call this, is too contrasty. There's way too much contrast. Dial it down. You went too overboard. I like the idea of contrasting it, but it's too much. And it looks like you're almost like sepia toning it in terms of color correction at the same time. So this looks like it's based off of the idea of a photography from the 60s or 50s or something like that. So I'm not, it looks like it's a picture taken with a camera with the white balance being way off. White should still be white. That's pretty important. You can't just colorize it as a general tone into sepia and then call it a day. That doesn't look correct. Also, I would rethink the in the indirect lighting on the wall itself, or just try and figure out what to do with it, because especially in the contrasty image, it almost looks like a tree trunk.
Yeah.
And I'm not too sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing right now, because it does create a sense of depth that is interesting, but it also kind of irritates the eye a little bit in terms of figuring out like where everything is in depth because of the highlights and the way that works. That is probably intentional, but there's a few things that's going on in that in the same side, because of the way that you have indirect lights at the very top of your ceiling, but then at the back, like it just seems impractical in ways of how you would have built this. Like there's a lot of this finishing that doesn't really make sense in that case. So I would probably rethink maybe the ceiling. If it was me, I would retract the ceiling a couple of more centimeters, so it's like 5 centimeters retracted all the way around, but not just in the sides, but also in the front. And then add the indirect lighting only in the top and not through down the wall itself. I think I would do something like that instead, because that would be a little bit more quote unquote normal, something that you actually do see.
Yeah, agree. And once again, this contrast between the rough surface and the smooth one is great to look at, but you just need to balance things out and also think about what's cool to look at. Like for example, here you don't need such a strong contrast on the sides, but take a look at the mirror here. Like, you remember Nicklas saying that you should work more on the plants and for them to be more vivid, to be more green and lively. Now imagine this reflection here without the volumetrics. If you remove the volumetrics, you have very green plants reflecting here. And this would actually be really awesome because you have a very strong contrast and so also strong bold colors here in the middle where you want to take a look at. We have this symmetrical central perspective. This is where the viewer focuses on automatically. So these things on the side, they don't need to be so contrasty because they're distracting, and it's just where you put your towels. This isn't that important. What's the special part is here, the vanity unit, the back wall. This is what's the highlight of this bathroom, architecturally seen and seen in terms of design. So yeah, I think there is a ton of potential here, and the best thing, the highlight for me of your work is actually your attitude and effort, not giving up on it, just continuing and then working it over and over again. Don't mind what people think about that. You're doing you do you, and we're here to support you and to help you. And you see here, you have an actual visualization teacher here to give you feedback today alongside with me. So we're supporting you, and I think it's great that you don't give up on it and you're like, oh, okay, I'll just do it right the next time, but you still continue doing it and continue. Yeah, you will be there as long as you need us.
For sure. Quick note, redo the door. It's a Chaos Cosmos store, and I can tell it from a mile away.
Yeah.
And it looks like you scaled it in the thickness as well. So it looks like it's not as thick in the base or the trim boards around. They look too thin that they would normally be for a door like that. Plus, the wooden texture you've given it does not do it like it does not give it any. It's not good. So at the very least, you could just take the material you use for your ceiling and put that onto the door instead. So you get a semi-gloss white finish on the door. That would probably work better. But currently, as it is right now, I'm not really that happy about it. It's also way too close again to the back wall in terms of that the nightstands or whatever you have over there. It looks like everything is just a little bit too tight. So I would just make it a white door or something that like a plain color rather than a textured surface.
Yeah.
And maybe the handle needs to be on the opposite, like a right-hand door instead of a left-hand door. It seems awkward that it's in there. But other than that,
yeah,
it's fine.
It makes sense. Also, when you enter the bathroom, you're immediately entering into those shelves, which you don't want. You want to enter in the middle of the room and then choose which way you want to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, great tips. Sheriff says very helpful and wonderful tips and comments. Thanks a lot. You're very welcome, I would say. Danushka has a question for you. My dear Nicklas, he asks, regarding the white color being white, what if the warm light is making changes on it and not allowing us to keep it as white?
Correct. That is what white balance is for. So when you create a camera, regardless of it being V-Ray or Corona cameras, the physical cameras that we use usually, you can do this in render as well, in the render setup somewhere, but I recommend doing it through cameras. What I recommend is that when you use colored lights, like lights that are warmer, colder, whatever, that you use temperatures instead, because normally it's based around real values that you would actually do in the real world. So for bathrooms, for example, you have a tendency of using a lot warmer lights than you would normally in the rest of the house. This is, by the way, there's cultural differences and depending on where you are in the world of what preferences are as well. The further east you go, usually the lights are a lot cooler. That's why when you see like an outdoor restaurant kind of vibe in Vietnam, for example, it's a almost blue light in comparison to what you see in Europe and in the US, for that matter. It's almost a yellow light in comparison. So there are some differences in terms of what we're used to here as well. But in general, what I would do is that if I made a bathroom, for example, where I want warm and nice lights, and it's maybe 3200 Kelvin, something like that, that would be fairly common for a bathroom, all the way up to 4200 Kelvin, something like that, somewhere in between. I would personally, so you would set your white balance to the same as the general lights are in that as well. It's fair to have some lights seem a little bit warmer than others. That means they need a lower Kelvin than your white balance for them to appear yellow. But generally, you would switch your white balance to match so that white looks white. You would always do that. And then you can shift it a tiny bit later if you want. So you don't need to be spot on. If all of your lights are 3200 Kelvin, you don't have to use 3200 Kelvin white balance. You could go with maybe 4000 or something like that. So it appears a little bit yellowish. It's okay that white isn't pure white, but you want it to generally appear white.
Yeah, you don't want to drown it in a certain color because it lays over everything, and then the whole look of the bathroom becomes sepia or whatever. And
yeah, exactly.
You don't want this. And good tip by Mario here: when you don't want color bleeding, use Corona ray switch material, which is great for this. Often used on parquet floors so that the ceiling doesn't become beige, and stays white, for example. Let's move on, Sheriff. I think we're done with this one, and this was really great. Awesome feedback. Let's continue with another work.
Yep.
This is a bit of a project visualization almost, because it's about this desk. This is what Hossam says about it. New desk design. We live in a wonderful world that is full of beauty, charm, and adventure. There is no end to the adventures that we can have if only we seek them with our eyes open. Wonderful. I'm not quite sure how it relates to the project, but it's a very positive message. I absolutely love it. Commercial project, modeling, texturing, done in Corona renderer, and he is aiming to improve his lighting and composition. So let's go through those images. And while we do that, dear Nicklas, should we go image to image or talk generally about this work?
We can do a quick image to image thing because it's lighting and composition. And so lighting I will talk about generally, and composition we can take on an image by image basis. I do have a few extra comments on it, but I'll keep it a little bit faster than we did previously, because otherwise we'll never be done.
So this was it. It's actually, I think it's very nice. It's, if I would do, let's say, give a title to it, I would say it's like an environmental lifestyle project visualization session, what we have here. And we have this table pretty naturally integrated into the scene. So I start with the positive stuff. Yep. Nicely designed environment as well. It's a bit of an IKEA type. You know more about it. It's closer to you than it's to me, even though most of the furniture here in Germany is from IKEA. And nice mix of interesting, isometric and classic shots. So let's start with the first shot, and please share your opinion or feedback.
So the first thing that comes to mind is that I have a hard time seeing in every shot what it is that you're selling. And what I mean by that is what are my eyes supposed to rest on? What is the purpose of each shot? This is more of a general approach to all of it. First of all, it's all great. It looks great. It's not bad at all. It actually, I like it. However, compositionally wise, like it's very much that table at the end, but nothing's really happening at that table at the same time. So it's like, what are we supposed to, but that's where our eyes goes every time, mostly because of your lighting, because it's the brightest, or not the brightest, but it's very much where you have this light source that's from the desk lamp that's kind of giving us the attention to it. So it's kind of the one being lit up, but there's not really
and the strongest contrast too. Like if you take a look at this bright room, you have the strongest, like the darkest object.
Everything else is toned down, right?
Yeah.
At the same time, one thing that does annoy me a little bit is that chair. The back part of that chair, especially on the close-up image, so here you have this, the back two legs is one piece, right? But how would that even be made? Because it's a bent piece where the wood grains bend with it, which is just not possible unless it's a vinyl and it's wrapped, which, you know, I would probably make the legs black as a metal, like iron rod or something like that to help the contrast, or you could do whatever. But it just, for me, just doesn't make sense that the wood grains kind of follow it along like that, because you wouldn't be able to bend wood like that. So it's very obviously fake wood if so, or you would need to make it out of several pieces instead. There's something like, that's just a very small thing, but it's very eye-catching in this one frame in particular. So I just wanted to get that in before I forgot. Besides that, I mean...
Shall we go back to the first one?
Sorry?
Shall we go back to the first shot?
Yeah, let's do that. So the... it's an interesting choice because you've chosen a really high focal length from far away. So it's squashing your perspective quite a lot. So you have a flat perspective, which means that there are no, like, you can see the lamp, which the actual ceiling lamp, which is in the actual frame. We know that that's like several meters away in the middle of the room, but it's as a flat that's the rest. So either you did an on purpose, like really high focal length to make it a little bit interesting, or it's actually an orthographic render. I'm not too sure if it's one or the other, because it's so flat that I can't tell if it's orthographic or not. It looks orthographic, but it could just be very high focal length. I mean, it's an interesting take, but it gets a little bit weird because you lose a lot of depth by doing that at the same time, which, again, this could be fine as a part of a sequence. And now we for sure are looking at this table, but are we selling the table? Are we, like, what is the table telling us? Is it just to show off our work, a place for us to work? And in that case, why is the laptop all the way back where you almost can't reach it from the chair? Like, there's a few, like, things that just doesn't necessarily make sense in that regard, in terms of what are you trying to show us?
Yeah, agree. It's like you're reading my points that I've written down here in my notes. Okay, this one.
All right, so this one is better. There's a lot more stuff going on, and there's some interesting lines and everything. Your surface imperfections in the roof or in the ceiling is a little bit too much to my taste. It looks like someone had a
fight,
a lion let loose in the room for too long, and it crawled on the ceiling. So maybe dial that down just a tiny bit. It's I don't know how you get so many dirty, deep scratches in your ceiling specifically. So for the rest of it, it just it stands out a little bit as part of the top of the image.
I think it's a certain type of stucco, but yeah, it looks like scratches.
Yeah,
so
I would do something else.
Yeah,
if it was me, it takes away too much of the attention.
Yeah.
I like the softness of the light in general. I like that it's kind of blending all together a little bit. You could do with a little bit more contrast in your, like, adding a few more gradients to it if you can get a little bit more of that softer light in, so that you get a better sense of the light direction from just the soft parts of the light, not just from the direct light that is hitting the floor. The direct light is great, it's a good touch. It's maybe, I would dial it down just a tiny bit, so it's not as bright as it is right now, because it's showing us something else than what the rest of your images are telling us to look at. It's basically showing us that little bed, or whatever you would call that, under the picture frame, because that's the one it's lighting up, right? But
yeah,
all of the other images and everything else is telling us to look at the desk behind that. So, like, this is sending a few confusing messages, but I would, again, have your sunlight be a little bit closer to the same intensity as your non-direct light. So the soft light coming from the sky, if you will, if you're using a dome light or whatever you're using for that. And I would try and make it so you get a few more gradients into it, because it does end up getting a little bit flat. It's a little bit too flat. You almost have the same color on the back wall as you do on the side wall. So the wall on the left versus the wall on the right, they end up blending very much together. So you lose a little bit of your depth through those walls. If you had a few more gradients from the right to the corner, and then try and see if you can dial down the amount of light hitting the back wall at the same time. That's hard to do, but that's what I would try and achieve if possible.
Yeah.
The perspective is kind of weird as well, because again, this is just a person taking an image at eye height and then taking that image, and it doesn't really tell us anything. A good rule of thumb is whatever it is that you're trying to sell, like whatever it is that you want us to look at, try and be at eye level with that item. So if it's the desk, you need to go down to eye level, what we would call eye level of that desk. Or if it's the coffee table in front of us, which is interesting, but there's no light on it, so it's not the one that we're initially thinking about, even though someone made a huge effort of putting way too much food on that tray. There's no focus on it. So is that what you want us to focus on? In that case, you need to emphasize it more with lighting and change your perspective a little bit. I would lower the camera angle a tiny bit. If this is the general general composition you want to go for.
Yeah, maybe straighten your verticals.
No one has that color coordinated bookshelf. Like, that's just not how books work.
They didn't work like that in the past. Nowadays, people actually really buy books for their color to put them inside.
But that's just insane. They all look like it's the same book, like same two books that have been multiplied around. I would change that up a little bit, because it works and it's okay, but it's just very color coordinated.
Yeah. And that tray is really artificially full. Like if it's a store which sells those goods, make them full. But if it's like for private use, then just make a few snacks, a bowl of chips or something. It's way more natural than having, restaurant style type of tray full of food. And or turn the light. If you want this light to be more prominent, like a spotlight on a stage, then you need to turn it towards the table, because the table is your main hero and your main actor here. If you want to keep it as a mood light, you can add maybe a tree or something to create a gobbo effect on the floor, but then tone it down so that it's not so prominent. Because right now it shows us something else. It leads the eye from the right to the left, and here we find not the project that you're selling, which simply isn't that good. Let's move over to the next one. We actually talked about this one.
A quick note on the composition for this one. It's a little bit awkward. You need to take the camera back a little bit more so you'd get more air on the top, because it feels cramped from the top because you're cutting off that plant. The plant itself could look better. That's what it is. But since you're leaving air and margins on the bottom, so you can see the whole chair, which makes me believe it's the chair that's important, but I'm not too sure if it is, because you're kind of also keep showing me the desk itself, so I'm not too sure. And we're seeing the back of the chair, which is usually not the way that we would present that chair. So right now, your image is screaming, look at the chair.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the chair is not separated from the background of the table, so the table and the chair goes into like the same thing, because it's the same material essentially. So they should be separated more so we can perceive depth a little bit better. And your image currently is very much just middle ground. Like, think of foreground, middle ground, background. Right now you just have middle ground. There's not enough depth in this image. Lighting can help with this. Your table itself gives a little bit of that because of the light that hits the top of it. But because it blends so much with the chair, it ends up just kind of all being at the same depth. So I would change this around a little bit more. So yeah, that's the primary things I have for that one. There's more that you can look into, but very much all of your renders are actually pretty decent. But what I would do in general, as a general advice, do more blockouts. and just do gray renders essentially with simple blockouts, and place your cameras and decide what you want to do with your cameras before actually making the whole scene. Because if you make the whole scene and do all of that effort, you're going to end up not showing things, because it turns out that the better composition only cuts away quite a few things that you might have placed already, and maybe you don't want to cut those things away because you don't want to kill your darlings, which then ends up compromising your composition instead. So make up your mind with your composition first with blockouts, and then model your scene around your cameras instead of the other way around. Usually that's better, unless you're willing to sacrifice work that someone's never gonna see, because you can't cover everything with all your cameras usually.
Totally agree.
I think that's all I have for this picture.
Yeah.
The next one is
And
very
also-
much the same style in terms of other things. Maybe you have something too, sorry.
Yeah, for this one, and I just make sure, because Hossam wrote, I just designed the desk and threw some things together to practice. There is nothing wrong with that, but you wanted to practice certain things, and this is what we comment on right now. Nigel says, would you recommend studying architectural photographers' work for ideas and references?
Exactly.
Of
Use
course.
references, see what others do.
Yeah.
But the point that I think most people don't realize is that all of the photographers usually who do this, they have something to sell. Usually they have a hero object or whatever in mind for all of these things. Even if it's just the room itself could be the hero, but all of your images are currently focusing on that desk, so that's why we're assuming that's the hero in this. And then again, you need to change a few things for that to even work. But look at what photographers do and see how they sell the mood or the idea of something.
Yeah, and have a clear concept for what you want to show the viewer. What's the purpose of this image? It's not only an image on its own. It's an image that needs to do something. It sends a message. And what's this message? This is the first thing you need to know when you approach it. Yeah, like this one, for example. Why cut off the desk if it's about the desk? It's...
Yeah, and then you have the light, which is actually making that sofa really interesting because it's kind of glowing. I kind of love that as a light thing.
Yeah.
But why is it all the way to the left when the desk itself now looks like it's almost not lit up? And like this is a swing and a miss where that light should have hit the chair, if anything. And then move the camera a little bit further to the right. Because it doesn't make sense that we see half of the other thing.
Take a look at this interplay between light and shadow here. This is
it's great.
So interesting to look at. And here it's kind of dull because we don't have that anymore. And the table lamp could have produced it, but it's very soft. You see, it throws the things here on the table, throw almost no shadow. So you need to just be clear about what you want to do. This shot is very interesting. What do you think, Niklas?
Yeah, it is. I like it, but again, you end up with the issue of you have a little bit more of, let's call it middle ground and background. You're now still missing one of the three elements in terms of depth, because everything is on the same plane, which is fine in some cases, but there's a lot going on in this image. So again, my eyes are resting over, they're seeing the light from the desk lamp as the primary thing, but there's not really, like, I'm seeing pencils because that's the interesting silhouette being highlighted in that area. That's the issue here for me.
Yeah.
So I'm not too sure what to actually make of it. It's an interesting image, I guess, but it's kind of also telling me nothing at the same time, which is a little bit of a shame. I would, if I had to do an image like this, I would do a portrait style instead of landscape, and then focusing in around on the desk area instead of showing the whole room, because there's a lot of stuff going on in the whole room when we see it like this.
Yeah, this area here looks more prominent right now and more important than the desk itself, which you don't want to, because once again, you're doing project visualization. If you're doing a living room or interior design shots, then the talk will be different, but we focus on this table and this should be your main hero. And now imagine a movie and then imagine the main actors just being somewhere on the side, partially cut off, and some sidekicks or some random people on the street being in the middle. This doesn't make much sense, right? So yeah, don't cut it off. Make sure to include it. These are the things that you should cut off, not the table, because this is your main goal.
Yeah.
And Nigel asking why it's 9:49 p.m. Hitchcock. I don't know. Maybe this is the whole deal. Anyway, I think Hossam, I think you got a very cool feedback, and I think this is also a great exercise. You're on the right path. Keep experimenting, keep exercising your skills, but be sure that the things you may not pay full attention to everything. Like, let's say, the books on that shelf, that they're at the same color. Maybe it's not as important for your current exercise, but make sure that the things that are your main goal, that you work with references, do some reading on them even, and just focus on something, and they should be perfect then.
For sure. Question is if I got DC'd or Teo did. I think it was Teo this time as well. Let's see if he comes back. Hi, Teo.
Hey. Hi. I don't know. Every time I just switch to another tab, I'm
That's all good.
off Facebook, but whatever. I'm back. It's yeah. I mean, I'm freezing. We gotta deal with it for a while. I don't know what happens today. Maybe because today I'm in Chrome and not in Brave. I don't know. Whatever. Let's take a look at a personal project for a portfolio, a simple exterior done in 3ds Max and V-Ray.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
This is a fun way to start. So I want to guess what it is that you're selling. You're selling a car. And even if you go to the next picture, because there's only 2 renders, which is fine, you're still selling a car.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking at, because it's the car that's in focus. It's in the center of the frame almost in the first one. And in this one, it's kind of in your rule of first as well. So it's very much just, it's also where you have the most detail because of the asset you're using for it. So my eyes are drawn directly to that car in both images. That's the main issue here, because I'm fairly sure you didn't model the car. I'm pretty sure you want us to look at the house more so than anything. Which is a little bit of a shame, because you ended up rendering the car more than you rendered the house itself. The house has a tree in front of it, which kind of blocks our view of it a little bit, and the composition itself does not necessarily make sense for either of the 2 houses. I'm guessing it's the same house, but duplicated so we can see the back and the front at the same time, which is, it's a fun idea. It works okay.
I think
the problem is that we're focusing in between. Like, we're not seeing any of it, essentially.
Yeah. It's the free space between that we focus on with the car.
Yeah. So be careful about that. Doing exterior, I always, like, that is one of my own personal weaknesses as well. Maybe it's because of my attention span being a little bit too short to put in the work needed for it. I know Teo has done some really amazing exterior shots, so he's very much one of the people to listen for when it comes to doing these types of exterior shots. I feel like this is very Teo-ish to make something like this. But the main thing that I'm looking at is that what I mentioned before in some of the other projects as well, is that I'm not seeing enough gradients. A lot of the surfaces that you end up with in your materials are very much the same solid color through and through, which takes away a lot of that depth. So the road itself is the same gray-ish all the way around, almost as if it's in shadow, which is kind of weird considering that the rest of it is in sunlight. The house itself ends up getting almost the same color facades everywhere, where we're not really perceiving depth, especially like that white wall on the back side of the house on the right side. It's just the same grayish white all the way through and through. There's no gradient giving us depth to it and making it a little bit more interesting. And you might need to cheat a lot with hidden lights that can kind of give us a little bit of a gradient sometimes as well. But it's harder, because we also don't want to add lights that all of a sudden makes it look very fake at the same time. So it is like one of those things that can be really hard. Yeah. The trees look very much like typical Chaos Cosmos trees that doesn't look that good when you see them as they are right here. Like, that's just not how a tree looks. So it kind of steals a lot of my attention, because it's too simple in terms of like go out and look at trees. They don't look like that. They're a lot rougher in their surfaces, and they have usually a lot more going on with them as well. But obviously, I'm not going to bash you for just using an asset that could have been a little bit better. But you could put in some work on them if you want to.
There are different trees in the Cosmos library. There are some that you can put in the background, and that's absolutely fine because they're lightweight, because they don't have so much, polygons. But there are others which you need to use next to the camera, because if you use those that are for the background next to the camera, then you end up with an unrealistic image that you have to enhance with AI or something like this, but you cannot leave like that. So this is the Cosmos gallery. There are assets that are amazing for close-ups and stuff, and some that you can only use far away from the camera. And this type of tree is exactly this type. So unlike these boxes down here, which is wonderful, for example.
Yeah, they have a lot of great details in them. They look fine.
Yeah. Okay. Something else from your side?
I think not as much on this picture. I think we can see a little bit more on the next one.
Yeah, I want to say a few things about this one. So for an exercise, it seems like you challenge yourself with this one. I really enjoy that you decided to go with a situation like this, because usually what we have is like a straight street. The building is on the other side. We have a central perspective on it. We're standing on this side of the street, and we see some like street and some walkway, sidewalk, and that's it. But here you decided to go with an exciting landscape, with something like a whole settlement, with those duplex houses. So you challenge yourself to something really pretty cool. And I think there is a lot of potential to what you have already built here or established here. You just need to approach it differently. And in this particular case, despite the focal point, which we already discussed, I really enjoy like this type of composition, the natural framing that you have here, and the lighting to me is pretty pleasant, exactly for something like this, because we talked about gradients. Take a look at this one. Take a look at how cool it is, because there are darker parts, brighter parts, and this looks so lively, let's say, in comparison to what we have here or here in the driveway. So yeah, and the big issue that we see here immediately, even without zooming in, is how lifeless the scene is. There is nothing on these interiors, nothing on the balconies, no people. Like, you're depicting a living quarter, like a settlement, housing estate, whatever you want to call it. At least a few people you need to put in here to add some life. Hint interiors, put people, whatever you want to do it with, cutouts, with 3D people plus AI enhancement, only with AI, with Nano Banana, whatever you want to do. And some storytelling elements too, like gardening tools, bikes by some kids, terrace furniture, just, add the mood. Because right now it's like it was a construction site until yesterday, and now it's officially sold, and now they wait for the people to start moving in.
Exterior lamps. I also want to add, like, there's quite a few details in terms of the house. I mentioned it as in there's the most details on the car, because the car is a finished asset, which is fine. But there's quite a few details that's missing from the houses to be functional houses in itself. Like, I'm not an house expert. I'm not an architect myself, but like, I would miss that there might need some gutters at the very least and stuff like that as well. Like, there's just no proof that anyone's actually using this house. So there's quite a few details that are missing for this to end up being a believable house.
Yeah, guttering, downpipes, entrance doors, doorbells, post boxes, driveway apron here. It's not a continuous curb here. You need this type of
getting the car over that curb is going to be great.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you need those details. Like, architectural detail is crucial for realism. It's people, the human's eye is used to seeing this, even known experts, because we walk out there and we see houses and we know what a house has, the things it features. So yeah, you definitely need to add more. And Nicklas, you wanted to talk more about this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's more of the same, essentially. It's a little bit better in terms of composition, because we're seeing more of the house. The car is still stealing quite a lot of the show, even though it's not even in direct sunlight in the same place. But again, it's mostly because of all of those details. They end up popping because the eye is drawn to, there's more happening there, essentially. I would have the tree is a little bit close to us, so I would have found a solution with not having this big tree outside of the house that can kind of block half of it. Find a way or a perspective where the tree isn't blocking as much. So just orbit the camera a little bit more to the right, and maybe center frame the house a little bit more in this case. And then again, focus on the gradients in your materials so that you get some variance in the levels of the materials, because they end up being like the same gray color for the ceiling or the roof, the same white color for the back wall, the same stone facade, which doesn't have any depth in it. So, you know, work with displacement maps, work with all of these things. Like, it looks like a very American house where everything is made out of wood and then just plastered almost like pictures on top of it to make it look like it's stone. It doesn't look like stone, right?
Yeah.
It needs to be actual real stone and feel like real stone. So there's no texture to it, essentially. Yeah. And this is like not even a new house is this pretty in color, in terms of like, you need more imperfections, you need more color variation and texture to it as well. Sure, it shouldn't look dirty, but no house is this clean. So those things. But again, as soon as you start adding exterior lights to the house and other things that people might have on this, you can actually, because the sun is fairly low in your scene, you can turn them on and help use them to create those gradients and more interesting details to look at. And that would also light up the house a little bit more and make the car less interesting, because that would fall more into shadow and we would be more intrigued about your house. Careful about modeling stuff like this as well. You have a lot of like sharp corners and stuff like that as well. There's no chamfers being used on any of this as far as I can tell. And it should be more rounded off in a lot of cases. It looks like more chamfers would have been better for some of these things, at least, because chamfers will catch the light as well. So you will get these highlight edges that looks more amazing. So you would want a little bit more of that.
Absolutely. And also I find the camera positioning here a bit awkward, to be honest, because it's like a drone shot or something like this. And I don't really see the need for it. Like, if you want to show the balcony here on the second floor, then you need to go higher so that we actually see it. But right now, if we were let's say at normal high level of a normal person, we would still see the same. So if you have the camera in an unusual height, then there needs to be a good reason for it. So, and either we're standing on some type of platform because of, the landscape, or because you want to show some things, but then you need to go higher so that you show us, let's say, the balcony here, what happens on the floor of it or whatever. But right now, there is no real need for this awkward, natural camera height. And I mean, there is also, you can work more on, a more natural representation of a forest, because, you need a bit of a, how should I put it? Like, underbush, I think it is called, there's some shrubs underneath.
Yeah, shrubberies and stuff like that to make it more, like, nature is kind of random. Yeah. So you need a lot of that randomness for it to look more believable. Right now you have fairly simple grass on a plain with some noise on it, and then trees.
Yeah.
So that's not how nature works. Nature has a billion other things that is among it. So you need to add that. And same goes with the small bushes that are randomly in front of the house, which looks like it. You might as well then place those plastic flamingos that some people have, or garden gnomes or something. Like that would have done the same. And they would have probably actually been integrated a little bit better naturally by just being there.
That's true.
More details is the gist of it.
You don't scatter on grass. Like a look at the buxus here. For example, the grass wouldn't grow underneath those plants. It just wouldn't, because it doesn't get enough sunlight, it doesn't get enough water. So what usually people do in situations like this is you need to, have an exclude area with this scatter here, and then underneath we just have soil or some types of mulch or something like this,
Yeah, mulch would look good on it, I think.
Yeah, mulch always looks good because it creates some contrast to the surrounding grass. And so, I think you have to summarize, I think you have a very good and interesting base to work with. And if you bring life into it, if you add storytelling, if you work more on the materials, on the gradients, take care of proper framing, compositions, I think you can create a wonderful portfolio project out of what you already have. It just needs more time in the oven, right?
Yep.
Also, there is a great, fantastic feedback by Łukasz to your work. I don't know, I don't dare press anything because I'll be thrown away. But yeah, there is a lengthy feedback by Łukasz here. And talking about Łukasz, this would have been my transition to our AI talk. But I'll
Oh, right. We need that as well.
Oh yeah, we did that on Q&A. We'll just still be here another 3 hours. But I'm sure that when I press something else, I'll be thrown away once again. So let's see. I'm still here.
You're still here, so it's fine.
Wow, unbelievable. So yeah, we wanted to talk a bit about AI. And I just mentioned Łukasz, and he had this very interesting post where he experimented with Nano Banana, enhancing some of his previous renders or creating something entirely new. And this is exactly what I wanted to show you. So this is like the clay of the first scene and some enhancement with Nano Banana. So we don't see the, his initial render, we just see the enhanced version here, but it's already very funky, nice storytelling and all of that. Here we have another example, which is also, just take a look at this natural depiction. It's really, really strong. But this third example is actually the most interesting one, at least to me, because this one, he only had the clay render, which he turned into an actual render with the help of Nano Banana. So there was no middle stop. It wasn't a render which was enhanced with AI. It was a clay render which was turned into something realistic with the help of AI. And even though it has its typical AI look to it, I think it's still very strong and impressive. And as you guys know, we have our ongoing remise challenge until the end of November. You still have time to work on it, to submit your work. For this, I created this model with the help of Pedro, who refined it. Very kind of him. And I share this model with you so that you don't have to create this from scratch. And to remind you about this from time to time, because this is a storytelling challenge, not an archviz challenge. Obviously, this object is not really commercially relevant in any way. I decided to use AI to just go to Vantage, export an angle from my clay model. It's not even textured, and then turn it into something. So I have made my own experiments with just having a clay render. We see there is even no surroundings whatsoever. And then with a few prompts in Nano Banana, we end up with something like this, which isn't only, let's say, it's not only Nano Banana, it's Nano Banana plus Magnific. But what counts is that in the end, we have a strong storytelling image with some really good photographic values to it. Just take a look at the tonal contrasts here, the lighting and all of this. The cool thing about it is that there is also the possibility to change the mood and the whole lighting scenario of the shot like this. So it's not that you end up with this one image and that's it. But no, we can also change the mood of it with something which I always like. I love this type of lighting, even though it's not always perfect for depicting architecture. Or we can go with something entirely else, like this type is a horror image, which I think I shared on Halloween or something, which is inspired by a horror game called Outlast. You may have heard about it. Or we can go with an entirely different angle. So like seeing this, why did I show this to you? We see that AI is getting more and more capable, producing even better and better results with minimal input, because once again, this was that in the beginning. So I can kind of, we're keeping it realistic here. We're keeping it real. We want to have honest talk and not just be an echo chamber like how awesome AI is. I personally like it. I use it, but I can also understand when some artists are scared for their future when seeing what AI is capable of nowadays. So I wanted to ask you, dear Nicklas, about your opinion on this and your advice to those artists who are seeing this and are scared for their future.
Sure.
Please.
I'm a huge advocate for implementing AI into your workflow. Like let's start there. And that can be for some a controversial point. But I am. But I think of it as a tool in your toolbox. It's just another tool. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this talk, I started up with 3D Studio for a long time ago. And before that, back then, there wasn't there wasn't third-party renderers like V-Ray or Mentor Ray or even like any of those. We were using scanline renderers, and even the scanline renderer didn't really have any of those fancy tools. Like GI was definitely not a thing. Reflections was almost not a thing, right? Like one of the more impressive things that people did back then was to make a checkerboard and then a chrome sphere on that checkerboard. That was kind of the go-to impressive shot to do in 3D, right? So my question back to anyone who's thinking that AI is going to take away my job, because it's the AI that's doing a lot of things, right? But isn't it like, what's the difference for you prompting the AI with a grayscale image or a blockout or whatever, and it painting on top of it, versus you're setting up a few things in your viewport and then you're pressing render? Like, what's the actual difference at the end of the day? Because something magically happens in between those two things. You directed a lot of things and what you wanted something to behave, and then you press render and it calculated everything to give you the result that you asked for. Where an AI is the same. You're doing a lot of gray blockouts and whatever you might be doing, and then you're pressing a button or giving it a text prompt to even direct it even further to then have it give you a rendered result, essentially. You're not doing any of those calculations. I mean, I haven't seen any of those people who's afraid of it taking away our jobs. I haven't seen them sitting there with a notebook and a pencil and trying to do the math themselves in terms of how the light should be bouncing and the samples and all of those different things, right? So the AI isn't really doing anything that we haven't done, like that you aren't already doing. We're just calling it AI, and it seems like it's magically doing a few extra things that we don't normally do. But that's usually a bad thing when it does that. We want it to do exactly what we do. And your job is not anymore, is becoming less and less a technical artist perspective. So if you found V-Ray hard to use, or even Corona or whatever, you're in luck, because what it seems like the world is going towards is that we're getting more focus on the creative work and the soft skills rather than the hard skills, and using, the hard way of using V-Ray, the render settings, the whatever you might have. All of those things are slowly disappearing now, because it's becoming easier to get that end result, but the end result being good is based around your foundational knowledge of what makes a good image. So that's what you should be focusing on, because that's probably where we're going towards. I say probably because I don't have a crystal ball that's telling me where we are actually going, but that's where I'm seeing it go. And I don't think it's going to take away jobs. If anything, it's going to add jobs.
I agree. I just, here on the campus, we don't want to force people into, like, because we have some artists who dislike
for sure.
AI and refuse to use it, and I think they also deserve respect. Contrary to what happens outside, where if you don't agree with certain things, immediately you're pushed away. We don't want to do this. So we want to be. We don't really want to become an echo chamber where we just repeat one and the same. Everybody happily agrees, and that's it. So this is why from time to time I ask challenging questions like this, just so that we tackle this topic from different angles. And I think looking at this example with the remise, for example, I think many consider that, let's say, their client will have some stupid BIM model, and then they'll just go send it to AI, and they won't need the artist anymore because the clients themselves will do it, which, as we've talked often, means that the clients need to know what they want first, and second, they need to know what a good image looks like. So they need to have those foundations that you talk about, like the basics, photography, what is good composition, what's good framing, colors, contrast, and all of this, which they don't. But I think that, so this is why every time I'm asked a question like I just asked you, I say that the artists that need to fear, and I think they really do, are the artists who offer nothing more than 3D images. Something done in 3D, put some textures on it, press render. If this is all you offer, then fear for your job, because AI is doing it already. if you know the basics, if you know what a good image looks like, how to tell a story, and all of this, I also don't think that this should be more than a tool that you put into your toolbox. But I'd just like to ask such questions because we want to keep an open mind here and hear different views. And yeah, this is why. And how and where do you implement AI currently in your workflows or even in your daily life? I, for example, use ChatGPT nonstop.
Yep. So, I mean, I don't personally use that much in terms of generative AI. I use a lot of AI-based tools,
Yeah.
but that you only basically know our AI because it's in the name of it. It doesn't really like ooze AI in the same sense that Midjourney does when you go in and prompt something with a text, right? So I don't use that many like generative AI tools. If anything, I use them for enhancing more so than anything. So I'm polishing or refining on something that I've already done, because that takes away the current factor that is some of the harder things to do with AI is consistency and continuity, right? So continuity issues is currently, at the very least, of what I'm seeing of people who's experimenting a lot more with it than I am. I'm seeing them still have the issues of continuity and all of those things. So if you were to take the images you showed that you did earlier with the backlight, for example, and I told you, well, could you show me what it looks like if we turn the camera 180 degrees and look the other way? Like what's in the other direction?
Yeah.
Would it be able to produce that the sun is still the same place and still all of the other things? And would the snow be kind of the same? Sure, if there's a few differences, that's not as much of a problem. But I'm interested in, can I take all of the renders that the client might be able to ask me for and actually produce the same result every time? That's the important bits for me. And fully generative AI usually can't do that as much right now. There might be a few that I'm not that aware of, and I will admit that if that's the case. But I am more expecting to so that's why I'm using more refinements in terms of AI, where it doesn't matter as much. So the ones Chaos is implementing themselves, for example, with their enhancer or whatever AI enhancer on foliage and on people, I think those are cool because it takes away a little bit of that, jankiness that maybe the people in the Chaos Cosmos library kind of look like sometimes. You're like, oh, this does not look that pleasing, or it's actually disturbing a little bit from the render, even though we need to have people there to show scale or whatever it is. So being able to just enhance over and to still get the type of human we kind of chose, but someone that doesn't look as off-putting as it might be if it's a low poly whatever, that kind of helps. So that's what so I use it more for that, for adding a few details so I don't have to do as much work. That doesn't really require much more. It's just more time spent on, like, I already know what I want. I don't need it to be an unnecessarily long task for me to sit there and add details when I know what the details are. So it's just taking away some of those, the more boring parts of the job sometimes, which I kind of like as well.
Yeah, refining, or you can also upscale, render in a smaller resolution, save time, then upscale, things like this. Also, as Nigel says, it's expensive if you add up all the prompt iterations to get the exact results you want compared to working in Chrome or V-Ray.
So having it be as directed as possible is the goal for me right now. The more random result you get based off of a vague text prompt is not necessarily a good way of producing anything, especially if you can't reproduce it a bunch of times. That's where it gets really awkward. And it almost feels random that you can solve the issue that the client might have or not. So that's why I'm more into, like, okay, we can do small refinements and add details to stuff that I've already done, because that's more in my control. And I can I know for a fact that I can have continuity in all of my shots and whatever I kind of need. So that's where I would mostly use those things.
It's a polishing tool for you, mostly.
Yeah, it could also be for the early days of the project. So thumbnailing or whatever, to try and direct the client and figuring out which direction are we going. So I can do cheap generative AI prompts to get an idea of the client saying, oh yeah, this is what we want. And I can show it with something that resembles their product or whatever it might be, without having to, because back in the day, before AI, people would take Google image search and find competitive products or manufacturers or whatever, and find those, and like, is it something like this, or is it something like this, or is it something like
references,
and that could take forever to figure something out, or they have to use quite a lot of their imagination. And I mean, a lot of our clients don't really have imagination, so it's kind of nice if we can help them on that journey as well, and just make it very clear for them that this is a 5-minute thing that I've just created just to get an idea of what direction you want to go in. Don't consider this anyway final, because it's not, we can't use it for final. It looks like shit. And like surface level, it looks fine, but it's not good. So this is just to give an idea of what direction we want to go for, and then I can start working with it.
Yeah, totally. So the ideation phase, just helping with coming up with the concept, because obviously you can just have a clay, let's say, interior without anything in it. Then you can give it to AI. It can furnish it in a way. Then you can have 3-4 styles that you can offer to your client, but they are not like those generic references that you get from Pinterest. They will be specific because they happen within the limits of their apartment or whatever. So they're very closely related to their project, so they can see it and then decide for a direction which you can then implement in 3D using your 3D skills, going back to people fearing for their jobs. Nigel says, what about AI for image to 3D model generation? Have you tried it out?
So I have played a little bit around with it. I haven't tried the newest models, but I've seen some of the results from some of the newer versions that are able to do that. And it actually looks very promising in terms of how good topology it actually produces. I know we talked. Were you part of that discussion? We talked a little bit about it at Chaos Connect days as well. So we did mention that some of the newer versions out there are really generating quite useful topology versions. And if they didn't, there were ways around it with retopology tools as well, both through either Blender or 3ds Max with their retopology tools as well. So it's getting more and more valid as a thing. I have no issues with them whatsoever, because at the end of the day, for me, I don't consider any differences in terms of photogrammetry versus that. That's effectively the same in my brain, right? It's just faster. It's just a better way for me to get a quicker result, so I don't have to spend as much time doing that, because I don't care about the model. Theoretically, I care about the end result and what it is that I'm trying to convey or sell for the client, right? So if I can get the model basically for free, that doesn't mean that I'm now worth less, because they weren't going to pay me that much for making the model itself. If anything, I would always try and find someone who already made that model and pay them to just buy an asset off of a store and then use that, because it's almost never can I get a client to pay me to sit and model something intricately for days and days and days, when it's not that part that's the important part. So if I can get that for free-ish through AI, and I say ish because prompting costs money, right? So that would be great. And Rodin, the Hyper 3D AI, exactly, Nigel, that was the one I was thinking about. So yeah.
And you get exactly what you want. This is the other thing, because if you go to buy an asset, it could be something similar to what you want. But let's say modeling the remise for the challenge, there are some parts of it, because this is like an old historical building and it has all of those details. And I'm not the best modeler. Like I moved over to Max in the end of 2019 and didn't really have the time to really get very deep into it and become a great modeler. So I always try to get by and just find a quick way to achieve the final outcome, which, by the way, is the only thing which is relevant to the client. They don't care how you achieve that goal. They care about the final outcome. And I was able with AI, with some tools, I was able to take some photos, just a one photo actually, and create some really difficult geometry that I tried creating before that with parametric tools, and it was a huge time saver for me and a huge relief. So and this was exactly what I wanted. This wasn't just some type of element that I could download somewhere online. It was my element, exactly the one that I needed for the remise. So I'm also totally into it. I absolutely agree with it. And how about the chaos AI? Because there was a post, I think from yesterday, from Marcelo, about the chaos AI material generator, and let's say people were not that satisfied with it. Obviously we had a discussion on it. You remember the Chaos Connect days, there was a presentation, there was a lot of talk about AI. And yeah, I mean, I think what Chaos are doing with their responsible AI, how they call it, is the right thing to do, because they use public data that they are allowed to use, instead of just getting all the images from the internet, no matter if the original creators like it or not, agree or not. But of course, this way it takes longer. So I mean, the Chaos AI material generator is still in beta, and there are tools out there where you can create, stuff better, like textures up to
Sure.
4K or 8K better. But I don't know. What's your opinion on this?
I mean, it's great that it's there. I haven't used it more than I haven't found anywhere where I could use it as a part of like something deliverable wise. I've used it in terms of teaching, in terms of showing what it's capable of and what it's not capable of. And currently, there's still quite a ways way before it seems like it's something that I can take into a production flow and use for anything there. But that's fine. We got to start somewhere, right? When AI was introduced, we all saw a video of Will Smith eating spaghetti and it looked horrible, right? And
Yeah,
now you can find the same video or someone who prompted essentially the same thing and it actually looks believable. So, and that's what, 2 years apart, those two things?
yeah,
So give it time. We got to start with the idea, and the idea is to do AI material generation based off of a simple photo. And as we learn more about the language models and how it can calculate all of the different things, and it maybe learns a little bit more about how materials actually work, then we eventually will get something more useful. It is very much in beta, and it also states so that it is in beta when you use it as well. So I'm not expecting to get something that useful from it. I'm expecting to see an idea work, but other than that, I'm kind of expecting it to be a bit janky, and until we kind of figure out how can we make it better. So it's a good start, but I'm not expecting to get something that can solve all of my issues. Still expecting to spend a lot of time doing materials myself. And if you
yeah.
wanted more, intricate materials like that, there's a lot of great old scripts for it. I know that people mention like Pixplant and stuff like that as well. Or, I mean, go to Adobe and use Substance Designer if you need like high-end normal maps or whatever based off of your materials. Like, there's lots of solutions out there. It's just a matter of figuring out what we can do.
I agree, and provide feedback to Chaos.
Yeah,
So because it's in beta, this is a project which is in development, meaning that they rely on your feedback, on our feedback, so
yeah,
that they
exactly.
can develop this project in a way which is useful to us in the end. So it's normal for something in a beta. This is the same with computer games or other software. You try it out, it doesn't work flawlessly, it's still in development. But when people are active and provide their opinions and wishes for the future and their constructive feedback, they can actually shape this project exactly as they want to have it in future and profit from it, as you
Yeah.
said. So yeah, absolutely agree with this. So I think we can talk about AI way more, but let's get into some more general questions. And if you guys also have something to ask Nicklas, please shoot. I will try to redirect your question to him. What apart from AI tools, do you have some other favorite tool other than V-Ray? Like something that you use that you've discovered for yourself, and you're like, "Hey, this is cool." Do you want to?
Hmm. I have a few things that I just kind of prefer in my workflow, but it depends. It's very project dependent. So there's a bunch of projects I would never do this, and there's a few where I would definitely want to do this. So I really enjoy using Blackmagic design products. So in my case, DaVinci Resolve, and in that retrospect, also Fusion through DaVinci Resolve. I'm not the biggest fan of Nuke for a lot of different reasons, but I like to, so I have a full-on workflow on how to do back to beauty rendering, for example, with Fusion specifically, and I've made my own scripts for it as well. So I have macros to literally just take an EXR straight out of V-Ray with all of the passes that I would normally use, and it automatically sets everything up in Fusion for me with just 2 clicks. Whereas before, if you had to do that in After Effects and using Extractor or something like that, it would take, I mean, forever to set all of that up. And just to get back to the result you already have, which is your beauty, essentially. So it's a lot of it for a lot of people. It ends up being a lot of work for like for just getting that control. And in many cases, they don't need that control. Like that's the biggest problem with all of that. But again, there's a lot of projects where I don't need full back to beauty compositing workflow. But if I did full on animations, for example, which I did not too long ago, I would definitely want all of those render elements at the same time.
Nice. This is very interesting to know. And, in the beginning, we talked about how you're an educator and how educators failed at provoking interest and passion in their students because they weren't up to date, oftentimes not only with the current software, hardware, whatever, but also, in terms of, being sympathetic and engaging enough. But as being an educator, how do you keep up with all the, latest tools, trends, being it AI or not? I mean, or is it even possible and isn't even needed? Like,
I mean, of course it's possible. But it's time consuming. It's just like anyone else, essentially. Like spending the time needed to actually start looking into different tools when you hear about them and being curious about it. It does affect some things. Like I have almost no portfolio to my name anymore because I've been teaching for so long. So all of the time that I would normally have to try and play with big projects and make something that looks really cool, I usually end up just doing small tests that kind of just becomes a proof of concept rather than something looking great. So I have a lot of proof of concepts that's useless in terms of portfolio, but it works because it's enough that it's just enough for me to need to teach someone else and figure out how it works for them. So I don't end up with these beautiful projects as often as I would like. In fact, it's been a long time since I ended up with something I think looked really great. But that's mostly because of time, right? Because you never, like, becoming a 3D artist, viz or not, it doesn't really matter. You're never really done. There's always more to do, right? There's the world keeps changing, the programs keeps changing, AI gets implemented, and then next year something else is going to be implemented probably, or whatever, right? And it'll change our workflow all the time. There's nothing new about it. It's a cycle that we've been through this a billion times before. So it's just we just call it something different every time. And every time there's someone who's afraid of losing their job to it or becoming invaluable to the workflow of it. And every time so far we've disproven the fact, and if anything, it's just created more jobs. So it's just a matter of trying to keep tabs on everything, read articles, stay connected with communities, and you will see others experiment with something and you might get intrigued, and then you can start experimenting yourself. So even me just keeping an eye out on Chaos Campus once in a while, I don't post that often anymore, but I do look at what people post, and maybe I see someone playing around with AI. I'm thinking, that's interesting. I want to try that out and see if I can use it for something.
Yeah, I think this is the power of community. I will have 3 questions from Amit regarding the Chaos Campus, which I'll ask you in a second. But I think to summarize it, you don't need to use any AI software. You listen to Nicklas, for example, on the masterclasses when people ask like, yeah, do you use Clink? And he's like, yeah, you know what? No, I stick to Runway. And so far, it fulfills my needs. I don't need to use any software out there. Over time, it's, of course, quite expensive to do so. And you don't also have the time to learn every piece of software out there or every AI tool. The same way you don't go and learn Max, Cinema, Blender, SketchUp, Rhino, and everything. You just stick with your 3D software that fulfills your needs, and then with one render engine. And same goes with, like, if you like Magnific, just be open, keep your senses open, and absolutely agree with Nicklas here. Be in communities, read, and just keep an eye open on what happens. And like, if you see, suddenly people start putting people in their scenes with Nano Banana, let me try it out because it looks so easy. It works out great. I already see it. So you can maybe take it in your toolbox, but you don't need to go and learn every piece of software because you go crazy, because there is so much out there. It's literally impossible, but also not needed. It's great, of course, especially for an educator like Nicklas, but you don't need to know everything. Like, it's good if you have an idea of what's up there, what options there are, so that you can go back and grab them if you need them, but stick to what you like. Now let's go to the questions by Amit. Amit, our most prominent community member. always the most active one every month. I hope someday we see him on the Chaos Connect days next time. It will be
that would
awesome.
be cool.
So first question is, how do you feel about the progress of this group since you have been distant from it for quite some time? Is it going in the right direction, or if you had been more core member, you would have taken it into a different direction? So yeah, be aware what you say.
I mean, I like it. I mean, the progress of this group since I've been distant from it. Yeah, it's definitely the right direction. I feel like I can take almost all three questions in one here.
Yeah.
So I am very happy with where this group is going and what Theo especially has done with all of this. Like, I couldn't have imagined someone wanting to spend this much time on this group. I'm glad that someone did, and when I say someone, I mean Theo, because that's 100% you. And I couldn't be happier with the results of this group. It's such an amazing feat of getting this to that many members and having people be this engaged with it and doing all of these shows with keeping it realistic and all of the other things. Like, I couldn't have even imagined that being a possibility in the long run, especially maybe for, you know, a couple of months, but not like with the consistency of what you've been doing. That's insane in itself. So that's very much kudos to you, to Theo, and all of the amazing work that he's put into it. And it is, I know for a fact, it is a lot of hours. So that's not taken for granted by any means. If I were the last thing question is, any future thoughts for this group and where you would like to see it in the coming days or years? There are things in the works, as far as I'm aware. There is no, we don't know how much it's going to affect Chaos Campus and in which directions or anything like that. But there is community-wise a lot of things in the works, which I'm very excited for, and I know that Theo is as well. And I can't wait for that to go into fruition and become something. And I think it's going to be a positive thing. If anything, if I could have changed something in terms of Chaos Campus and all of those things, the only actual thing, which I think is just a little bit of a shame, and it's not much, but that's the name. It's fine that it's called Chaos Campus, but the affiliation with being very much Chaos driven, there's nothing wrong with Chaos at all. I'm a huge fanboy of Chaos as a company, but it does leave out a few people who might want to do Viz specifically only with Blender and use cycles, for example. They're more than welcome to be part of Chaos Campus, but the name doesn't leave much for room for that interpretation unless you already knew. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's just it didn't need to be that affiliated with Chaos. It is, and that's fine, but it's just a different name or something like that could have worked better for something in that regard. But again, that would have just made it much more possible for even growing an even bigger community that we already have. And I'm hoping that we will see more of that in the future as well.
I first want to thank you from the bottom of my heart about your words. They mean so much to me. Because as you say, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of consistency, a lot of presence in order for the community to work. But it's also really rewarding because out of this, a culture actually developed. So now we have people like Amit, Danushka, Abdi, and so many, Mariana, Ulfat. I won't name them all because I will miss somebody who also contribute to this. So it's not only just me, being there and writing reviews, and everybody else just uses it as a some type of online gallery or archive, like most groups about renderings are. But we have an actual community. We have an actual sense of being together, of being tight knit, and kind of like a virtual office. This is what I want this to be like. You can just stand up and go and ask a friend, a colleague about something, and they'll answer you. And it's like at some point I made this question asking how people feel about this before I went to the Chaos Connect days because I wanted to be able to show this to the higher up so that they understand how important community is. And I read from many people saying that this is their safe space, that they they fear criticism, but here they know it's positive and all of this. So there is so much which was a payoff for me on an emotional level too, because it's we're creating a community. We have something special here. I think something unique, which I know no other place like this. And I love it. Regarding the name, I think, personally, I know Chaos Project. So if let's say we are, like say, like Amit says, Creative Campus or whatever, and many people from let's say Blender or from Unreal come over, I won't be able to very much help them, at least on the technical side. I can still talk about their composition and all of that, but when it comes to practical advice, I won't be able to help that much. So to me, it's okay that it's called the Chaos Campus. But yeah, I don't know how it develops. But the new community that's in development, it has a broader name, which is including for everyone. So I think this is something where you get the name that you were talking about very soon in the beginning of next year. But yeah, thanks, Amit, for your questions and of course for being so active, and thank you for your amazing words. I have further questions if it's okay for you. I mean, I don't know how much time you have.
Sure, we can spend a few minutes on a few more if you want.
People here are freaks. I mean it in a good sense. They would stay here for 4 more hours because they appreciate hearing it. And but this is also part of this community because they appreciate this and take this chance. So I wanted to ask you, because as somebody who did, and I think eventually still does, photography and videography, how relevant do you rate those real life skills for the visualization work?
I mean, for me, it goes hand in hand. It comes second nature. You use both quite a lot if you are aware of how it works. I use, we didn't talk too much about that part, but I'm definitely a photographer, and I have been for a long time as well. I still do photography and videography jobs to this day. In fact, last time was a couple of weeks ago. Was it last week? Yeah, it was last Saturday. I keep forgetting. Last Saturday, I was out actually actively working, and I was working as a videographer, documenting something, and I kind of just enjoy doing that as well. But it's very much the idea of composition and how everything kind of just works in conjunction with each other. You're a lot more limited, and yet again, you're a lot more free at the same time when using a camera, because the world is what it is. You can't change that. But you can change how it looks through the camera and using composition and how someone perceives it. So being aware of how that works makes it so that you need to make up your mind when you're doing 3D. Do you want to change the world in terms of model stuff differently or change it around where it's placed? Or do you want to accept this is how it's placed? How do I get it to look the way I want it to look by moving where I see it from, or moving the perspective, or whatever? It gives you a different way of thinking about things, with sometimes limiting yourself a little bit it can free you up for other things, essentially. I use this as part of my workflow ethics in V-Ray, for example, all the time. One of my go-to rules is, if you create a V-Ray Sun, which I almost always do, I actually don't use HDRIs that often in my personal opinion. But if I create a V-Ray Sun, I am not allowed to ever lower the intensity of the sun. The sun is always at an intensity of 1.
1, yeah.
And unless it's representing something other than a sun. If it's representing the moon, I would turn it down as an intensity. But that's it. Because that then forces me to work around with, okay, so if the sun is too intense, I need to lower the camera's exposure instead. So it creates a few rule sets that makes it a lot easier to figure out when do you turn down one versus another thing, and what advocates what to control, essentially. This is a basic thing, but sometimes you can take that into, okay, you're not allowed to change where the tree sits. You're only allowed to figure out other ways to look around the tree rather than to remove it. Just because you have the power, it doesn't mean that you should. Same goes for adding a camera in the middle of the air, 20 meters up, where it's impossible for a photographer to have been unless they have a crane or something like that. that makes it so that, I mean, you're not allowed to be where the photographer can't be. Okay, unless you're thinking like you're essentially doing drone shots or whatever, but people don't usually do that as much. And if you're doing a drone shot, make it look like a drone shot then, at the very least, because then you need a different focal length and other things as well. So I would do that if it was me.
I understand. And what do you say is the best way to learn, let's say, photography or videography skills? Would you say just learning by doing, or maybe invest in a course in the beginning, so to get the practical knowledge and then exercise it on a daily basis?
I mean, you could do courses if you want, for sure. If it depends on how you like to learn. I would getting started with 3D first is an easy way into photography, because if you already kind of know how the camera works. If you've used physical cameras in your 3D, it doesn't matter if it's Corona V-Ray or even something else. If it's physical based, it'll have the same options that a real camera has. You just need to learn where the buttons are. ISO is the same. Exposure settings is the same. Aperture is the same. All of those things actually works like a real camera, which is great, which makes it a lot easier to understand what's going on. And then get out there with any camera, even your phone, on pro mode, where you can set your own settings if you want, and you can learn so much by figuring out what works for a composition and what doesn't. Looking what others do, like look at references. And the reference here would be what professional photographers do for a living, or what, the same goes for 3D. If you want to make something that looks good in 3D, look at references first, right? That's what you're mimicking. So keep doing that and it'll be just fine. If you're into courses, sure, go do courses. We don't do photography courses specifically at CGspectrum, for example. We only do Viz, but I talk a lot about photography. And I use it a lot in the implementation of it. So you technically do learn photography. So I mean, if you want, you can go that way. You can just buy one of our courses and I'll teach you photography and Viz at the same time. But I don't blame anyone for not wanting to go that route. I mean, you can get really far with YouTube as well. The problem with finding your own material is you don't necessarily always know what to search for. So you might get it in a not a bad, but a different way, and it might be a slower paced way of learning, because it's kind of up to what you randomly find, and if you even find a good YouTuber to begin with, you don't even know, right? So again, that's the benefit of courses, like paid courses especially, is that at least you're paying someone to know exactly what you're supposed to learn in a specific order, so that you have the easiest and quickest time to absorb everything. That's why you should pay for it, but I get why you wouldn't as well.
Yeah, obviously.
It's not for everyone.
Sometimes the investment is worth it. I think cooking, you can learn on your own without investing in courses. I know a lot of people who did it this way, myself included, but I think sometimes it's really good to maybe learn let's say, get group knowledge in the beginning at least, and then start practicing it over time. This is like makes the learning curve a bit more pleasant to follow. And how about equipment? What is, let's say, the necessary minimum? Would you say a smartphone is enough, or would you suggest that people should go buy a good DSLR, even secondhand? You can.
If you want to just get started with photography and see if it's something for you, a newish smartphone is a good place to start. That would be more than enough for a lot of people. You'd be surprised on how good images you can actually produce with a smartphone, especially if it's new. And when I say new, within a year or two. But obviously, if you want to like do real photography, the best camera is the camera you have on you. That's always how it's been. So, and most people have their phone on them all the time. So, but it depends on what you want to take pictures of. So there's like the camera itself, the camera body almost doesn't matter. Is the cheapest of them as well, even though when you look at camera bodies, you realize that they're probably quite expensive, but it's not the expensive part. The expensive part is the lenses that you might realize that you need later on, and so on as well. And you can spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands on equipment, and it won't teach you anything. So, and I know, because I think we have collectively $200,000 worth of equipment in our house, and just photography equipment alone. If that's even enough, maybe it's 300,000, something like that. And I mean, to be fair, just to make it clear, both me and my wife, we work professionally with photography. She's a wildlife photographer, and I do photography through my studio as well. So that's why we have so much. But you don't need that. I mean, if you can get really far with a smartphone. And if you want to do a little bit more and you like the idea of having an actual camera, go out, find a decent mid-range camera is where I would start, and buy it used so that you don't have to pay full price. If you can get it for half price of something mid-range that's a couple of years old, you will get a good deal for your money, and you don't need to change camera systems all the time. And then you can find a few lenses, or maybe you could get someone who's selling all of their equipment at once and get a good deal with that. As long as within your personal budget, then you're fine. But it can get quite expensive really fast.
Yeah, this is why I asked, because in the end of the day, it's not about becoming photographers. It's about using the knowledge from photography into our 3D or visualization work. So maybe a phone is enough. I think a camera would be eventually the better option. Because of all the settings and stuff. But it's not about how expensive it is. I think it's just about take photos, learn the basics, and try to follow them. Taking photos in real life. Take more than one photo. Usually when I take a photo, when you see it on my phone, you'll see a whole sequence of probably 10 photos, me approaching it from different angles, because I'm not good enough to think that I know to take one shot the first time and it will be perfect. And as far as I know, professional photographers, we have one here, don't do it either. They
no.
tons of photos and select the best one with post-production.
You take thousands and thousands of photos usually, and it obviously depending on the type of job that you're doing as well. But you always want more just in case. And sometimes it's like small differences that makes a huge difference at the end of the day of making a great versus a not so great photo. I do see that Amit asks, in modern age of AI, do you still think hand-drawn sketches are equally important? It's the same answer, actually, because it's the same issue. If you're using generative AI to do a hand-drawn sketch, you get continuity issues. So it depends on what are the sketch for. If the sketch is just to get everyone on board with the same idea, AI is great. Like it can save you a bunch of time that you wouldn't normally have done. But if it's a hand-drawn sketch that was supposed to be hand-drawn and something deliverable to a client of any kind, and someone living off of the idea of drawing sketches or whatever, I'm not too sure what you mean here. So that's why I'm trying to cover all bases. Then you get the same issue with the AI of not having correct continuity and stuff like that as well. So you would need an artist anyway. And you would want a concept artist or something like that if that's the direction you want to take it. But I don't feel like that's what you probably meant when you said hand-drawn sketch specifically.
I think it depends on the sketch, but let's not forget that in the end of the day, for AI, you need some type of equipment. You need your phone, a PC, and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
And remembering some lunches I've had during my time in an architectural office, where we discuss something and then you just take a napkin and start sketching on it, because now it's the moment where you develop an idea, and it's the napkin, the fastest thing to get. You just need a pencil or a pen and a napkin, and you can have the sketch there, and this sketch can end up being the foundation of a fantastic, huge project. And this has happened in the past in architectural stories. Some of the most prominent sketches from major architects from all over the world have been done on napkins or whatever, something like this. So there is a difference between, sketch and AI, because in AI you need to do a prompt, you need to do versions, and sometimes the power of a stroke of a pencil or a pen could be still something different than what AI does, trying to be polished and cool and all of this. The imperfection is the strong part here.
Sure.
But let me ask you about, let's say you said you have a lot of equipment, very expensive equipment. I think not affordable for most people, but in the end of the day, I think looking at you, like being my co-reviewer today, looking at your background, at your lighting, I think this is something which is actually important, because a lot of the communication nowadays happens online and not on site with clients, by networking, when you apply for a job. So what would you say is the minimum what people need? Like something like a nice webcam and microphone, some lights, clean background.
You can get really far with just a decent camera, which a newer webcam can do for you. And in a lot of cases, actually your phone can do. You can connect your phones up as a webcam if you want to. You would need a stand of some type to have the phone to be at, so it makes a little bit more sense. You could use a DSLR if you had a camera anyways, if you're going that route. In my case, this is a way over the top camera that I'm using for a webcam. This is a Blackmagic Design Pocket 6K camera, which essentially was just something I had laying around. That says a lot about me, I think. But so that's what we ended up with here, but it might as well just have been a decent webcam, to be fair. A lot of it at the end of the day is light, but you don't need high-end production lights for this to work. You can, like, any bigger light source that you can diffuse out, and there's a lot of different ways to do that, and it's become a lot cheaper in the more recent years, especially during COVID. A lot happened in terms of people needing to be more online for video calls and stuff like that. So that actually boosted quite a lot of products for LED products that are cheap and doesn't take up as much space. A good company to look for in the cheaper consumer market would be Elgato. They do the Stream Deck, for example, that most people know with the buttons on, but they actually make like full-on camera stuff, capture cards, and even light sources that you can mount to your desks or on your walls or whatever, which has diffusers on them and stuff like that as well. So even just having 2 light sources, you can get pretty far. In this case, I technically have 3 light sources here visible currently. So one is the one right in front of me here, which is my key light. This is the one giving me the majority of my light here. I also, as you can see on my hair, I have a rim light. So that's the white light that's hitting me from up there. And that's the same giving this here, but that's also cutting me away as a silhouette from the background. And then the background is a physical background. So this is a black paper background that is on like hooks on chains that can be pulled up and down depending on what type of background we need, because we have different needs. But the light source itself is like an LED light. That's an RGB LED light that's beneath it here that I can just turn on and off as I please. So if I wanted to, I could just do it like this. And this is actually how I normally have my studio. So I actually just have a black background as I have here. But then it's important to have that rim light because so I get separated from the black background. So this is usually how I use my studio. And sometimes I turn on the light on behind me. Sometimes I don't.
This was a very quick lesson in studio lighting, 3-point lighting, and it's greatly implemented. But I think really in the end of the day, it is important to present yourself properly, and it doesn't need that much money. Like my setup here, I have a Logitech StreamCam, and I have 2 Logi lights, one warm, one colder. It's around $200 altogether, so you don't need to invest hundreds of thousands in this in order to look, properly. But it's important because this is the way you present yourself out there. Many people, as we already talked about it, many people know each other only online, and it's important that people hear you, that people properly see you. This is about professionalism, it's just being a pro and
I mean, keep in mind, I work from home. I professionally record videos for a living in terms of teaching people and so on as well. So that's, so in my case, these lights, they cost, I think, around $1,000 each as light sources. And then they have modifiers on them like softboxes and all of those, and that adds on top of it as well. And again, the camera is overkill, and the same with everything else here, essentially. Everything's overkill. But it doesn't have to be. You can get really far with any plain old thing, and you might not even be able to tell the difference. In my case, these needs to be turned on for a long time in a setting. They need to be able to be dialed in exactly how I want them to be. I'm probably going to change them a little bit sooner because they're taking up a lot of space, so I want more space around me here. But that would, again, I'm doing it professionally so I can get away with spending a bit more, and it makes more sense. Just like if you're using your computer professionally, you might spend more money on your computer versus if you're just using it for gaming, or if you're just using it for changing like Word or whatever. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, would you want to say would you recommend some books, movies, music, something which inspires?
Putting me on the spot. Go listen to Sleep Token. They're great. If you need some music, go listen to Sleep Token. That's always great. I feel like they're like right now they're one of the more responsible bands for getting people more into metal. I think that's great because it's a little bit different and it's a little bit more easy for people to listen to. other than that, in terms of books, I don't actually read that many books right now. Trying to think if what was the last one I was reading. I think actually that was I can't remember what the last one was. I think that was a photography something.
Yeah, same here.
And in terms of movies, I mean, just follow your guts and what you want to see, whatever you're into, right? I mean, I loved Denis Villeneuve, so if you're into like sci-fi and stuff like that, go with Dune, go with Blade Runner, go with Fifth Element, stuff like that. I think that's cool. There's some cool design aspects into it and some really cool cinematography. We do teach that as well as part of our degrees here. So we actually do talk a lot about movies and games, and especially, but that's on the degree programs, to be fair. So, yeah.
And about health, this is a very important topic on the campus. How do you keep physically and mentally healthy?
Ooh, so we talked a little bit about this before starting, actually. The main thing I do is I play games. So sometimes for me it's competitive games like esports titles or whatever. Other times it's AAA or whatever. Some of them are shooting games, like I mentioned to Teo before we started that I play Battlefield 6 right now. And again, it's just a matter of finding something that kind of speaks to you as a person. My wife plays a lot of games as well, but she's more like Nintendo and indie games and management games and stuff like that. So different vibes to different people, right? But that helps me kind of shut off all of the other things that I've been doing and just, get some entertainment and forget about the reality of the real world and all of those things as well. That, and I have an active dog and everything else, so we go out quite a lot for walks and get some fresh air, especially when working from home. It's quite important to remember to exercise a little bit, because it's you can feel it on your stomach and stuff like that as well. Yeah, keep moving a little bit.
It is the reality for many people on the campus and many people who watch us. This is why I always ask this question, because let's say in your case it's the dog. Because in Bulgaria, many people would ask me if I need a coffee, and then I would say I don't drink any coffee, and they would be like, how? And it's just like now that I'm back here and I bring every morning my daughter to school, and I have a hard time getting up. But
Yep.
once we're out there, especially now when it's cold, when I'm back here, I'm as if I have taken a coffee or two, because, I took a walk in the cold air outside and I'm absolutely refreshed, energized, and at full capacity when I come back.
Exactly.
So yeah, move your ass. Just don't sit the whole day. Get a treadmill if you can, or something like this for poor weather, or better, just go outside, hike, spend time with people. Don't enclose yourself and capture yourself, because you become your own prisoner, and it's not good for both physical and mental health.
Yeah. If you're introverted, still force yourself out to see a few people once in a while, even though you probably you'd probably lose your charge by being with people. But it's still quite important to stay sane at the end of the day as well.
Find people like you. Find soulmates in Bulgaria. I like keeping to my family here. These are the people that I love the most, that I want to have around me. But being in Bulgaria with all of you guys, this was so incredibly recharging, because I was among soulmates. These were my people, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm here at home as well. So find people who are similar to you, similar interests, similar viewing in the same direction, and you, even if you're an introvert, you enjoy it. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Your message for the Chaos Campus community, final question, dear Niklas.
I don't know, man. Just keep doing what you're all doing. I'm keeping an eye out on it, all of you. Like, I am watching quite a lot. Quite often I'm looking at all of the images. I don't interact that much with it anymore, because I've just been very busy for the past 3 years especially, which is obviously a shame. I do work on trying to be a little bit more active again, and I do want to be more active in the communities as well. But please keep doing what you're all doing. Keep posting, keep working on your portfolio, working on yourselves, and keep helping each other. Like, if you see something and you have an opinion on it, keep working on how to help others with feedback. You learn a lot from giving feedback as well. You learn a lot about yourself, and you end up learning how to communicate as well. Maybe you're not the best at doing something. Like, let's be honest, we're all nerds here, right? And there's bound to be someone in between that maybe not be the best at actually communicating with other people. So getting some practice in that is the way that you can work on yourself, not just on the 3D skills. You need soft skills with your hard skills as well. Giving feedback is a really good way of learning a lot of those things.
And it pays off. Like,
just remember to be nice.
Yeah, constructive and friendly. And it really pays off. Just think about Amit. And once again, I can totally see Amit being on one of the next Chaos Connect days as a prize for his activity. So if you think, well, why I do it, I don't get anything out of it. You just heard it. You learn from it as well. I've been doing it actively for 6 years, and I can absolutely confirm that. But you push yourself out there as well. Everybody knows people like Amit, Danushka, Abdi, Ulfahad, Mariana, and so many people from the group are now names that people know because they've heard them from their activity. So it pays off. Absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's wrap this episode, even though people say that we need you more often in the show. And I absolutely agree. It's such a pleasure. I think you can do, maybe someday when I'm not there, you can do the show alone. You do it so great. It was such a pleasure hanging out with you once again, and after seeing you in Sofia live. And yeah, thank you guys for sticking out with us all this time. It's always a pleasure to get your questions, to to have you here with us, to feel your presence, and interact with you during the live show. Have a great rest of November, and don't forget our Remise challenge. You still have around 3 weeks until the end of the month to fulfill it. And don't forget, don't skip and miss our next show on November 25th, which is going to be a business special. Please think about questions and write them down in the post. And until then, stay safe, be healthy, and I hope to see you again in 2 weeks. Don't forget to rock on. We have 2 rock fans here, and keep it real, my friends. Much love and goodbye. It was a pleasure.
Bye, guys.